Things there. Just one thing. Mary's requesting everybody speak into the mic tonight. So I just wanted to pass that on there. So I'll call the meeting the order. We acknowledge the land upon which we gather is on unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, and we pay our respects to Indigenous Mi'kmaq people of this territory and past, present, and future. We'll go down to number 2, declaration of conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interest of any council members here tonight on tonight's agenda? No? Nothing at all? We'll move down number 3, approval of agenda. So everybody had a chance to look at the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve it. Motion.
Yes, I don't know if everyone saw, but just a heads up that the minutes have been updated for the planning meeting that happened in September. So appreciate that they are last minute, but Stephanie was working on them quite diligently, and they are there now.
Okay.
Yep.
And they're in the under planning, development, and heritage. Councillor McDonald.
They should be.
Yeah.
I'm just checking the updated package.
I think so.
There. Yeah. They should be there.
Yep. So we had one, Councillor Cox approved it, seconded by Councillor Chandler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Then we'll move down to look in the minutes. And this is the minutes from August 3rd.
August 9th?
August 9th, sorry, yeah. So is anybody, anything to add, any to correct for Mary?
No, as always, they look pretty good to me.
Okay, all good?
I'd move then, Mr. Deputy, to have those minutes approved.
Okay, looking for a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, thank you. Is there any presentations from the floor? CEO Crosby? No presentations from the floor? And we'll go down to the mayor's report, and I'll read this for Mayor Ogden. Just the mayor's report from August 9th to September 13th of this year. He chaired the regular monthly meeting of Town Council and the Committee of the Whole Council. Steve, the Mayor Ogden, participated in a meeting of the Planning Committee. Was very honored to participate in 2 events hosted by the Curlew community. Participated along with council and staff in Shape Stratford intermunicipal meeting. Together with staff and Deputy Mayor Glenn presented former Mayor Mike Farmer and his wife Susan with a small gift to express their appreciation for the generous donation of 6 trees for Strawberry Hill Park. That was a nice gesture on behalf of Mike and his wife Susan. Had the pleasure of attending the council social evening. Was an interview by CBC about the impact of a population growth in Stratford. Along with several councillors, directors, myself, met with Housing Minister Rob Lance and MLAs Redmond. We'll just scratch MLA Burridge off there, Mary. Attended a briefing by auditors on the 2022-23 audit results. Participated in the Shape Stratford workshop for staff, council and planning committee. With councillors, Jeff McDonald had the pleasure of participating in a fundraising golf event to support the Stars for Life efforts to help autistic children. Participate in the Stop a Bus initiative to help food bank. Jill, you can probably elaborate on that one. Yeah. As vice chair of MCM Municipal Finance Infrastructure. Sorry. As vice chair of FCM Municipal Finance Infrastructure and Transportation Committee, participated in several national meetings along. Excuse me. I was supposed to turn this off and I didn't. There we go. Sorry. As vice chair of FCM Municipal Finance Infrastructure and Transportation Committee, participated in several national meetings, also meetings on the FCM Atlantic Caucus, FCM Environmental and Sustainable Development Committee, FCM Rural Forum, and FCM Committee of the Whole. Met with representative of Honeywell Corporation to explore possibility, energy saving, and possibilities. Spoke and visited with several residents, discussed various issues, attended internal meetings, and looked after the day-to-day affairs of the town. And that's from Mayor Steve Ogden on behalf of myself. Any questions on that? Anybody want to cross the floor?
Stars for Life put on for a very, very special cause. It's near and dear to a lot of our hearts in terms of the population that they serve and all of the good work that they're doing. Mayor and I had two hands tied behind our backs, unfortunately, because we were down 2 people, but I thought we did okay, all things considered, and certainly looking forward to the next event with that group.
Anybody else? Councillor Cox, anybody?
I just want to add about the Stuff the Bus that was put on down at the mall there at the that was it, No Frills.
Yes.
And Councillor Jill did a great job there on the radio and promoting that, and I think it was great for the residents of Stratford to come out and support such a great program, and maybe Councillor Chandler could add something to that, but you must have found it's nice to see the amount of support.
I don't know if this is working. Is it? Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, there was an incredible amount of support for the Step a Bus food drive in Stratford and across the island, and it was wonderful to be a part of it, and I guess also very eye-opening to see the increasing need for these services in our province, and to hear words like people are desperate and that that the numbers using food banks are unprecedented. So I think absolutely it was a learning experience, both in my in my work and in my role as a councillor, to see how great the demand for those things are. So thank you to everyone who came and contributed. It was much appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move down to the CEO report from our CEO, Jeremy Crosby.
Thank you, Your Worship. A little lighter report this month. I was off for a few weeks and for vacation, which was great. But I did attend a meeting with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor and representatives from the province, Minister Rob Lance.
Sorry, is your mic on there, or is it?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Can you guys?
No.
We catching them on the recording?
Sorry, Jeremy. It's on now. Okay.
Yeah, so I attended a meeting with Minister Rob Lance and Deputy Mayor and the Mayor with regard to our housing initiatives, and Jen Redmond, Minister of Workforce and Advanced Learning and Population, was also there. So talked about some of our affordable housing and attainable housing initiatives we're looking at, our Housing Accelerator Fund, and some of the changes we've already made to our bylaws and regulations to streamline development in the town. Really good meeting. They were impressed with everything that we're trying to do. Attended a meeting with senior staff and consultant that's going to be doing our organizational review. Few items with the terms and conditions they want us to sign that we want to have worked out before we do sign the agreement, but we had a meeting also today with them, and we will be proceeding to get that underway fairly soon, and excited about getting that done here in the town to look at making sure that we're doing everything as efficiently as we can. And attended a meeting with regarding the Crossroads development and some of the material that they're going to start to bring in to some of the sites. And we're having bi-weekly meetings with those folks just to make sure that we're all aware and ready for when they do start to haul the material in to some of the building sites that they have throughout the core area. But it's exciting to see that start to develop in certain ways. It'll be a while before we see buildings on there, but to have that material that's coming from the community campus going and then go to good use is a good thing. Other than that, those are the highlights. If anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer.
All good? Thank you,
Thank you.
CEO Crosby. And okay, we'll move down the safety services report from 9A here. Go ahead, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Your Worship. We didn't have a safety services meeting last month, but we do have one scheduled for next week, and the agenda is just kind of coming together for that. A couple things. We had some media questions around speed humps on Rosebank Road, and speed humps is general, and I think, as always happens, maybe some of the wording kind of gets taken out of context a little bit with things, but overall a good story around our use of evidence to decide where, when speed humps go down. They also looked at some other jurisdictions, and I know that I think we're ahead of them where we'll get a request, we'll use evidence to determine whether it's actually needed rather than just, a whole bunch of folks saying they do when may not be a big issue. So I think that's what came out in that story. I know we were hoping to get an update on when the contractor, Jeannie, may be coming to do the speed humps on Rosebank.
Sure that this was picking up, because when Jeremy was speaking, and I wasn't hearing him very well. Is this a shortage? I'll just try to speak loud. The speed humps have been installed on Rosebank Road as of yesterday.
Okay.
However, the contractor didn't quite follow the specifications, so they do have to go back and do some revisions to them.
Okay.
So they're there, but they will still be tweaked.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you for that update. I hadn't been down there, so I didn't get to see, but trust that everything will get straightened out. Thank you, Jeannie. Just before we bring Corporal Weatherby up, also just wanted to see if I can get an update from staff on E-Watch. I know there's been some back and forth on this over the months, trying to get this initiative going. And I know we've been through safety services. We've had chats here about it, and I know we're hoping to get the business community together. As Corporal Weatherby will speak to here, we have an increase in gas and dash incidents. We have shoplifting. The recent missing person case, the mother of that young lady is a neighbor of mine, and I think with some of the information that was out there that maybe, vehicles were heading over this way, that could have helped, at least helped some to narrow down the scope of the investigation. So I think I'm hoping we can have a good update here on when a meeting will be held with the business community. And I want to report progress next month at council, so I'm hoping someone can provide an update on that.
So, Councillor, is it on your agenda for your next meeting to discuss E-Watch and safety services, or is it at the staff level?
It's on the agenda for safety services because I want an update on it. I know Deputy Mayor does as well, and we had a couple of false starts at that committee, and we're not having any more. We want to move forward on it. We've made a decision on it. We need to get the business community involved, and I know they will to whatever extent they can. We want to move forward. So I know we're talking about meeting with the local business community, so I'm hoping that can be kind of solidified in the next little bit here.
Yep.
We did have a discussion with the MLA with regard to the cameras also, and they are quite interested in those. So, and we talked about close to 10 cameras, not just 2. So they're going to bring that back and for further discussion, but they are quite interested in that.
Thanks, Jeremy. That's great. And we need the business community on board, but we also would be great if we could have government because it's a gap right now for us. I know it's it maybe wasn't in the plans for us, but it's something that I know I'm sure Corporal Weatherby can speak to the benefits of it. As we grow, as Councillor Chandler was talking about, there's people are in a tight spot right now. Money's really tight. People are getting more desperate, and we're seeing more shoplifting. We're seeing more gas and dash. So we need to do our part to try to help law enforcement to nip these things in the bud before it becomes a real issue here. So I'm glad to hear some progress on that, and we will chat about it again on Monday night, Deputy Mayor, just to kind of firm up details and maybe give the committee an update that Jeremy just gave us on that. So
Monday night, the 15th, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's on our agenda, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
So we're meeting we're starting to bring it out to the business community first, or have a meeting in.
Well, I think they're probably at the same time. There's going to be some movement, hopefully, with government if they're interested.
Okay.
But we do need the business community. That is how the whole system operates. It's fun. Jeremy, if you have anything more, I'm just glad to see that there's some movement here.
I think that the 2 main cameras that we decided we were going to look at, we will talk to the business community first, but we hope to expand that right. So there could be 8 other cameras, and then that's where we would look at hopefully the province coming on board and helping us out with that. And it's a benefit to them, you know, to monitor their intersections too. So, but it was a positive discussion.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. So that's really that part of the report. I think if Corporal Weatherby is able to come up, we'll speak to the RCMP report. Or any questions before we do that on E-Watch? I know you guys, my fellow councillors and deputy mayor and Mayor Ogden know our feelings on this, and we want to get moving, so I appreciate that. Corporal Weatherby's, the RCMP report's in our package. I just before we turned over to you, I know there's some mischief's very high right now. I know there's some explanation around that. Gas and dash on the rise, shoplifting. I'm seeing an increase in indecent harassing communications. Any kind of update or any kind of commentary on that, Corporal Weatherby?
Well, for the month of August, as you can see, especially we'll talk about the mischiefs here first. I asked our detachment assistant, Eddie Smith, to kind of do more of a breakdown. Greg, our volunteer firefighter here with our fire department, who works with us as an analyst, Greg McCormick, he does up a report as well as Eddie Smith. I had asked Eddie to potentially break this mischief down. It's been brought up in various meetings. The mischiefs seem to be very high. So for the month of August, we see that there's 25 mischief complaints. When we break it down, it's actually 15 of those were like the door knocking, ringing doorbells at night, mischief, obstruction of enjoyment of property. When we look at the total of it, there was only one mischief of damage to property out of the 25. So 8 on top of that, in that 25, 8 were suspicious person type of mischiefs, which could relate obviously to the ringing the doorbells, knocking at the doors and running away. Typically, it is a pretty high number. There was one incident that's being dealt with and under investigation now, where some youths have been identified and some parents spoken to regarding that. It seems to have slowed down over, say, the last week or so. So with the mischief side, it is very high, but a lot of it we've been putting up the police drone as well in certain areas, but you put it up, but on a Friday or Saturday night there could be 5 or 6 different groups of people, so you don't know who exactly really to say who's doing it. So we're hoping to curb that by more patrols. Those residents that do have video surveillance, and that really helps us out, like having the doorbell cameras. With our thefts, gas related, I'm not quite sure if it's in. I know for thefts of shoplifting, we had 3 over August, and theft under 3. There was actually 22 gas-related thefts from the Esso and from the Petro-Canada. 20 of those were deemed to be unfounded. Usually we'll talk to the business. Sometimes people pay for their gas. They think they're reaching to tap using their credit card, and they're actually being shown in the video doing it, and then just assuming that it worked and driving away. Or they go into Tim Hortons and have a coffee, or bump into an old friend and start talking, and then go in and buy something else and forget that they actually pumped or not paid for the gas. So 20 of those were deemed to be unfounded, or proven to be unfounded. What we typically will do is, obviously they would have a plate for us. We would check the plate. If it's a Prince Edward Island plate, it's a lot easier for us to contact the registered owner, and sometimes this can be done and solved in 5 minutes, where it's a quick phone call and they're only even down the street, and you just forgot to pay for your gas. Oh, I'll be right back. Yeah. So a lot of those, the numbers are high, but there is actually one that's under investigation, that's still under investigation, and one there was insufficient evidence to proceed on that matter.
Ties up a lot of resources.
It does tie up some resources. We can get sometimes 4 or 5 of those in a shift. Yeah. And so you still have to do your backgrounds. If it's plates from outside the province, we're still trying to find out who the registered owner is, seeing if there's a means of contact.
Yeah.
So, but it can tie up some officer's time for part of the shift anyway, so.
And I do want to thank you, Corporal Weatherby, on the one case where there was a number of youth that were, I think we're all aware of, we received emails about, and you have spoken to parents and the kids, and I think that hopefully has been rectified. And I think a lot of it probably is just folks with a lot of time in their hands getting ready to go back to school, I'm sure, and trying to make the most out of the last days of summer. So good to hear it's not you know, a serious issue. Just back to the idea of the E-Watch. I know, Corporal Weatherby, you were with us when we went to City of Charlottetown and had the presentation by Chief McConnell, and I believe you were speaking highly of that program. And I know we'd like to include you and hopefully Chief McConnell in these meetings with the local community when we do that. Really helps to hear kind of the presentation from Chief McConnell was a really good one and really outlined the benefits, and to hear from the RCMB how you can use that. I know you guys are going to get sick of me talking about E-Watch, but it's coming, and we want to keep the ball rolling on it. So is that kind of where you're at, Corporal Weatherby, on the E-Watch? Kind of makes sense for us, would be beneficial to your group? And
I believe it would be beneficial. The results, we use, we contact Charlottetown Police quite a bit,
yeah,
working in joint partnerships. If there's, it could be a person's type of crime and we know the vehicle, we would contact Charlottetown, we would contact even Summerside. They have the license plate readers up at the Confederation Bridge as well. It really helps the police by narrowing down their movements, yeah, if they're still using that vehicle, yeah, especially. The E-Watch itself is, I believe, from the police perspective, is a deterrent in itself. Those that are involved in crime tend to, if they know there's E-Watch in the area, yeah, they tend to stay away from that area.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So we'd appreciate if you were able to take part in that. Any other questions for Corporal Weatherby or anything else you want to follow up on? I think I do want to thank you and your team for your increased patrols in areas where we had issues and more visibility. And I think, you know, hearing that a lot from the community about the coverage and how well people feel that it's been lately under your leadership. So I thank you for that. Anything else for Corporal Weatherby?
I had one quick question, and maybe you can't speak to this because maybe it is an active investigation, but obviously the Kinloch Road and perhaps additional incidents where people were approached walking.
Oh yes, I can.
I just, obviously that's something that perhaps might cause fear amongst a lot of people because it's a very popular area and an activity a lot of people do. I just wondered if you could reassure, would it be worth reassuring people that it's not a concern or anything like that?
Yes, from the police perspective, I can reassure. The files are concluded, yep, at this point. The individual was identified, and it's something the public's not in a need to be, there's any type of safety concern at this point at all. My wife was even approached by the same male and attempted to hug her as well. And yeah, although he was identified last week, yeah, when the media release was put out, just that yeah, that the person has been located.
Okay.
And I think my wife and I have come across the same individual walking across the bridge, and yeah, so I mean, different for two of us that were going, so I wasn't fearful, but I could see someone might be if they weren't anticipating somebody hugging them out of the blue. So thank you for looking into that, and thanks for the reassurance that we're, it probably won't happen.
I don't think it should happen any further.
Yeah, thank you.
No, good question, Councillor Chandler. Great question there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a quick thought. So I guess Corporal Weatherby, as far as calls that you get at the station, would probably the main call you get would be about speeding, would you say, at the police station? Would be residents about speeding, right?
Yes, Councillor Cox. We do receive quite a bit of traffic-related
Okay.
complaints, erratic drivers, possible impaired drivers.
Yeah.
I would say that
Speeding would be-
it is probably at the 40% range. I don't have the exact stat.
No,
but
exact.
that type of complaint would be one of our main ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, you know, hopefully in the future, and we've all been advocating for more police to help your cause there, to have more officers. That would certainly in the future, hopefully that's coming down the pike. But I guess the second part of that is there one day or a time period that you find where there seems to be more speeders happening in Stratford? Like more like supper, after supper, like Saturdays, or is there?
We tend to find that from 4 o'clock till 6 p.m. at the end of the day, whether that's people rushing home from work, that seems to be a bulk of our calls for traffic related.
Okay.
Fences coming through, and that wouldn't be all from Stratford residents. It would be people coming through, going down east,
Right.
things like that. So, but that's typically the time frame that
Okay.
we're more busy with those type of complaints.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much.
I'd like to comment, Corporal Weatherby, on your accessibility. You're so quick and respond very quick. It's great. The councillors all around the table appreciate that.
We do.
And you're doing a terrific job, and for the residents of Stratford. And I know that Councillor Cog said about support. We had to take one from the budget this year, but hopefully next year we know, looking at these occurrences, that they're increasing every month. And September, October usually a busy month. Usually, but the numbers there are higher and higher and higher. Yeah, but anyway, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
I just have one thing to add.
Okay.
Just the project that we were starting, Wendy Watts and I, and the town of Stratford, the RCMP in Stratford, and the city of Charlottetown and the Charlottetown Police, just the project we're talking about, get caught, get rewarded. We're still trying to continue that. This is for giving out free ice cream coupons to kids on scooters or bikes or whatever wearing helmets. More or less just went out on patrols. We're going to try to push that a little further here in September because the weather's still nice and kids are still out on the bike. So we're still looking at getting that.
That's great.
That's great. That's good community-based policing.
Yeah.
And I can add one more thing.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
When we were on the topic of speed humps, the second day of school, I was working, I parked and did just a strategic traffic enforcement, just in between. I kind of parked in between Glen Stewart School and Glen Stewart and Stratford School. But I found traffic coming up from Stratford Road. Prior to the speed humps, they were probably at around 50. They were getting up there. The speed humps were really slowing them down.
Okay.
And then obviously when they saw myself in the car.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. No, we appreciate that. It speaks to what we're doing with those, and again, trying to learn from the Rosebank Road effort there. Good to hear that those are down, and we're going to see if that pans out, and if that does, we'll use that approach in other areas, and if not, we will again, we will look at other things. But it's great to hear from our RCMP that they are seeing compliance and seeing some good results from that.
So the one at, Council, the one on Rosebank Road, it's a pilot project led by the government, right?
It's a pilot project. Those are permanent speed humps.
Right.
And I think that's something that wasn't when I spoke to the story. So in the CBC story, a pilot doesn't necessarily equate to temporary. This is a pilot on that road. Again, asphalt can be milled, and if it doesn't work, then obviously things can be changed. But this is a pilot for the town. These are permanent speed humps that are much less, I guess, destructive to cars than the temporary ones. I think, Jeremy, that it's something they're much easier, and Jeannie, they're a lot easier than those. Yeah. So again, like I said in the story, it's a pilot, but they are permanent. They're being paved down, and we believe that this is a measure. It's not the full. There's some other issues on that road in other areas in town, so this is an approach we're looking at, and if other measures need to be taken, then we have to decide that as a group, and so we'll see, and I'm glad to hear they're down.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corporal Weatherby.
Thank you, Corporal.
I promise I'm not going to take as much time tonight as I usually do. The Humane Society report is in your package. Pretty standard there. Community patrols continue, no issues to report. Great news on the transit. The numbers remain strong. We're up to 292 average riders a day in August. Thank you, Corporal Weatherby. It's pretty phenomenal to think about 292 riders a day average in August. It does speak to these new runs that have been added and just the general uptake and the movement towards transit in our community. All that said, we do still need more access in Ward 3. I know, Deputy Mayor, when the time is right and when we can find something that'll work in Ward 3 in the outskirts, we will do that. So we're still on that idea, but understand that it's not a simple solution. Any questions on transit or the Humane Society report? Lastly, the fire company, we had our meeting earlier this week on Monday, and I'm pleased to let everyone know that we have a new chief. Greg McCormick has been named new chief, and the new deputy chief is Calvin Crane. So I congratulate both of those gentlemen on their new roles. I want to thank Peter McDonald and Dave Hughes for stepping in to fill the roles on an interim basis while there was vacancies there, and they did an excellent job. And we'll stay on to mentor the new chief and deputy for the next few months to make sure they have everything they need to succeed. And it's great to see some long-term folks there that are moving up and taking on new roles and getting a chance to make their mark on their department. So 22 calls in August. The majority of them again are in Stratford. A lot of fire alarms with no fire. Some motor vehicle accidents and a medical first response. Pretty standard. Majority of these calls are coming from Stratford. Any questions on that before I get into the last part here? Again, we're a major part of their business. So the one thing that came up in our meeting the other night is the financial pressures on our volunteer fire department, especially Crossroads. Last year, I know there was about 50 or 60 extra calls that came up as a result of Fiona. So the average call out, I think they looked at it the other night, gave us a stat of around $700 to $800 for the cost of a call out. That's not including gas. That's just in paying our volunteer, providing a little stipend for our members to show up. So it resulted last year in a significant loss of deficit for our fire company. And so I guess where I'm going with this is it's a volunteer fire company. More and more every day, every year is being asked of them by the health system, by government, by residents, just to provide and fill the gaps where a lot of folks aren't. So I'm hoping to set up a meeting with Minister Redmond and Minister Burridge and town staff and reps from the board of the fire company to discuss this a little more. We're not the only fire company that's dealing with this, but it's really starting to come to a crunch here because I know we're looking at with potentially 2,600, 3,000 new units in the next number of years. They're going to be looking for new equipment. There's a core group of probably 40 volunteers right now, and they are volunteers. So we need to make sure they're looked after. We need to make sure they have the equipment that they need, and that the company is able to survive with the funds that they do have. So it's become a big issue. It's not just this fire company, but I think we need to lead the charge on it because it's really shown in the last year what an impact these added costs are having on a volunteer fire company. So I'm hoping to set that up, and I'll work with the folks here to do that. But it's a big issue. Yeah. So that's really it with them. I want to thank them all for their continued service to the community, and we'll do our best to advocate for them and see if we can find a way to help support these departments. Any questions? That's my report.
So I guess just on that point, just with the fire, so really, how do you envision that starting to roll out, I guess, Councillor, just in terms of just are you just pegging that for us to consider at a later point, or just?
The ask, I get, it's not of the town. I think it's more to create awareness that, you know, as the town has grown, we have a new beautiful emergency services center over there, and we have, you know, adequate equipment for now, but if we're growing the way that we are planned to grow, that department's going to need to grow, and you know, they need funds to do it, and I know there's not a lot of programs out there, so there's only so many ways to get those dollars. It's not an ask of this council or this town, it's really for the province to understand a lot of the services that are being offloaded onto our first responders, that, you know, it's just incrementally growing here every year, and more is being put on our volunteers, and they're starting to either age out. It's hard to recruit when you're asking them, not even just about fires, but in motor vehicle accidents, and helping with folks that are you know, in a mental crisis on the bridge or in the water, and so it's not for everyone, but we want to make sure that at least government, provincial government especially, understands what they're asking of these folks, and they're happy to do it, but they can only do it for so long, and we can't just keep offloading services on them, onto volunteers. If they all walk tomorrow, we're in a crisis. So I want some recognition. I know that both ministers from Stratford are very aware and are great supporters of the fire company, but I want them to bring that forward to their table, just to make sure that they understand it. And again, it's not just us, but it's really, you know, one year, one big event can throw the whole financial situation into chaos. So we don't want it to be on their backs.
No.
I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yep. All right.
Jeremy, do you have any suggestions regards to that problem we might have, like down the road, meeting with the MLAs and talking to the province? Probably look at a budget time, will we?
Kim and I plan to meet with representatives from the fire company here in the next little while with regard to their budget and what their asks are going to be in the future. So we can definitely take that information forward. And you know, with having both our MLAs with an office here, we have access to them quite regularly, so we can bring that up from time to time. So yeah, sure. Just one reminder, if everybody could speak directly into the mics. I know Carter just sent me a message just to make sure that we're going to get them checked out next time, but just not, you're fine, but just make sure that.
Jeff in the mic.
Thank you, Jeremy. Whoops, sorry.
Yep, thank
you, Jeremy, for that. And again, it wasn't a comment directed towards the town. It was just in general, like the you know, being asked to show up at accident scenes and to provide traffic control and to do all these things where there are paid folks who do it. I know the capacity is not there, but again, it's more of a recognition just in general of the contribution to the island community, and
like everybody's doing more, the paramedics are doing more, fire is doing more, police are doing more.
They are, and it's a hard job, but it's mentally draining, and we just need to be there to support them in every way we can.
Yep.
Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, and I think I had sent you an email, but I had was on the scene of an accident handy my home, and there was an RCMP vehicle that was dealing with the 2 drivers and passengers. There was an ambulance that came to the scene and left fairly quickly, but it was the volunteer firefighters that were actually, it seemed to be on the scene the longest. They were directing traffic. They were kind of interacting with the folks in the, like, anyway, it was very obvious to me that they played a very significant role in those situations. So I agree.
Thank you for that.
You get an RCP member by himself and need a couple of volunteers. It's fabulous. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to, that's the Safety Service Report. We'll move on to number 10, Recreation and Cultural Events, and we'll give it to Councillor Jill Chandler, who's Chair of Recreation and Cultural Events.
Okay. In regards to our committees, we did pause meetings over July and August. The Recreation, Culture and Events Committee is set to meet this month, and the Arts and Culture Subcommittee will meet tomorrow. Stratford Youth Center and Council. Just some updates here. The youth members worked hard in August cleaning and painting the youth center. I don't know if any of you have seen the space or watched online, but they did a renovation. They also were busy gardening in the community garden plot and helping Heidi Wood with different projects around the youth center. And they also donated food to different charity groups to help those in need. And I can't say enough how many valuable life skills I think these kids are learning who are participating in the Stratford Youth Center and Council. New Youth Center website is now live, and that's stratfordyouthcenter.com, and it's a fully functional site, and there's more details in your agenda package. The Youth Leadership Club continues to meet regularly. The group is made up of 25 youth members, grades 7 to 12, and we've discussed it before, but this group is fundraising to go on a leadership trip to Quebec and Ontario, summer of 2024, and they've currently raised $18,000 of a $45,000 goal. The new Cheryl Duffy Service Award was issued to the first 2 recipients, and I think that we did speak about that at our last meeting. This award is given to 2 recipients who are going to continuing post-secondary education, and it's to assist with their tuition costs, and it does go to members of the youth center. Wanted to let everybody know that the 2nd annual Cheryl Duffy Memorial Walk will be hosted on Saturday, September 23rd at Cotton Park as part of the Fall Fest, and participants can register online at the youth center website or the morning of the event. And I believe there is a 1, 2, or 5 kilometer option, and it is free, but people can make donations during the walk. Youth Center will be hosting a fun fair on September 23rd at Cotton Park as part of the Fall Fest event. Event will include inflatables, games, full-service canteen, etc. All are encouraged to participate in this event, and the Youth Center Leadership Club will be there doing some fundraising on site as well. Youth Council has 12 council members that are all planning on returning this next season. They're grade 11 and 12 and are committing for another 1-year term. This is the group, as we've discussed, that is focused on the crosswalk and going to meet with members of government to discuss safety on the road. In regards to capital projects, the mini ball field at Fullerton's Creek is set to begin construction in early September. Maybe Jeremy will update us on that. This will provide a 5th field for the community and will support play for the under 5 to under 11 age groups for both softball and baseball. The civil infrastructure of the community campus is well under construction, and preparations are being made for winter activities. In regards to emergency preparedness, obviously with natural weather events such as hurricanes, such as the one that perhaps we will experience this weekend, the town is undertaking preventative planning measures to preempt unnecessary disruption in services. Contingency planning will not cover every possible occurrence. However, it can mitigate some disruptions. The town's infrastructure team has made efforts to secure valuable infrastructure around the community, develop response plans for minimizing recovery time, and the town is prepared to open the town center as a reception center should it be directed by the Provincial Emergency Measures Operations. In the aftermath of Hurricane Fiona, the town's reception center provided temporary relief to over 2,500 residents and guests over a 2-week period. And I did just want to update that this week town picnic tables were secured, windscreens have been taken down, and supplies have been stocked up. And of course, the town encourages all residents to prepare their homes for a minimum of 72 hours of power outages by securing additional items such as water, food, batteries, flashlights, blankets, and fuel. We'll move on to the arts and culture portfolio now. Registration opens September 5th for all arts and cultural programs for youth, adults, and seniors, and those are online and in-person classes, and they are listed in your agenda package. In regards to events, Fall Fest returns after several years' absence, running from September 22nd to 24th at the Robert Cotton Memorial Park. The festival celebrates culture, arts, and nature. Guests at Fall Fest will enjoy Murmured Futures, which is a moving poem, on Saturday, September 23rd, and live entertainment, family movies, etc. And there's more details, and you probably all saw the flyer for it. Of note, it's the first time that this event has been offered due to different circumstances. So we're hopeful that the weather will be great so that all residents can get out and enjoy that. As Steve Gallant had mentioned, the Corolla Association hosted their festival in the town center on August 19th. Additionally, the skateboard park hosted a very successful Junior Jam skateboarding competition on Sunday, August 27th. The town center will be hosting 2 wrestling shows on September 29th and 30th, and these family events have always been very well attended. In regards to our recreational programs, pickleball, and yes, Jody, Councillor Jackson and I very much enjoyed our introduction to pickleball lessons, and we are planning on competing really in pickleball in the future. But a lot of the programming seems in the gymnasium to be focused on pickleball because the uptick in interest is so great. So pickleball's offered weekdays from 9 until 3, Friday evenings for youth, and a separate program for adults. Additionally, there's co-ed recreational badminton, volleyball, basketball. Adult programs are offered weeknights from September to December. Indoor tennis training programs are also being offered various times throughout the day from October to December, and there's more information on the rec programs in your package. And finally, we wanted to give some congrats to some of our local teams. This year's U11A Tier 2 champions were the Stratford A's, so congratulations on a great tournament. A big congratulations to Stratford Team Lanigan, under 13 AA, provincial champions who defeated the Western Mariners 12-2 in the final. Another trophy coming home for the U13 AAA Eastern Express from the Atlantic Baseball Canada Championships. Congrats to the U11 AAA Eastern Express, who played a tight contest against the Mid-Isle Mustangs in the championship game. They're off to Corner Brook, Newfoundland to compete in the Atlantics. And in softball, the U15A silver medal winners were Stratford Steelers, Team Bradley. U15 AA gold medal winners, Stratford Steelers. U13 AA gold medal winners, Stratford Steelers. And congratulations to the U11 bronze medal winners, Stratford Steelers. And that concludes our report.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Any questions?
Just to comment on the pickleball, it was a great time, and the pickleball community is very welcoming for sure. I did follow through and signed up for Friday nights. I realized that it's not really for people that are beginners like myself, but I never got there Friday. I'm going to practice, and hopefully Councillor Chandler and I, once the time comes, 55-plus games, will be in great shape to compete. And I did see Councillor Cox raise his hand around the dunk tank stuff, so if you do it, I would do it. If you're looking for volunteers. I think Mayor Ogden's just too tall.
Do you know what, I just looked up, I don't know much about pickleball, so I just looked it up, but I didn't realize it was first started in 1965. Because it's such a, like, it seems like the last 3 or 4 years, especially the last couple of years, it's really come on, you know?
COVID, since COVID.
Yeah, but it's been around 60 years almost, so.
Yeah.
Great sport, though.
It has low barriers to entry, and I think it appeals to people of all ages, and because it is that sort of mix of table tennis, like it's accessible, I think, for most, so yeah, and it's fun.
Well, it's fun. It's a great social event, and it's great for our residents and even our out-of-town guests. They're allowed to play too. Everybody from across the river there, Charlottetown, and we're the other way, so everybody's it's just a social event, so it's great to see that.
Does anybody have any questions in regards to the report? No? Okay.
I see go ahead, Gordon.
Great job.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on finance and technology, and we'll have a report from Councillor Ron Dowling.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Glant. The Finance and Technology Committee did meet today, in fact, at noontime. We moved it up a week so that we could discuss the consolidated financial statements that were prepared by MRSB. It's the annual audit, and as of March 31st, 2023. And we wanted to have that meeting just prior to the council meeting, so that's why it was moved up. Just some items for mention from the staff, and particularly Director O'Connell. There was a presentation from Michelle Burge with MRSB to review the consolidated financial statements for March 31st, 2023. Those were circulated to council for review as well. The CAO and Deputy CAO and Director were present, as well as Mayor Ogden and the Finance and Technology Co-Chair, Councillor McDonald, and myself. It was a very good and detailed presentation, and essentially, in accordance with Ms. Burge, the town is in very good fiscal position, and the audit, as she puts it, is referred to, I guess, in the accounting circles as a clean audit. So there's no significant issues of concerns that were arising from it. And I'll open up after the presentation for any questions or comments that people might have in relation to the audit of the financial statements. Utility collections, there's 135 first letters issued with the date of August 4th, 2023, and almost 63,000 was collected of the 107,424. Outstanding second letters were issued on August 31st, 2023, with the due date of September 15th, 2023. So hopefully we can clean up those backlogs as of September 15th. Staff are working on a public schools branch lease renewal with a plan to meet with representatives from the school board in September to review the information with them. The director met with consultants for the town organizational review, along with the CAO and deputy CAO. And she's working with the consultant regarding information on development costs for the town. A letter was sent to the province regarding the error in payment for the municipal tax credit. And that letter was signed by the mayor, and it was in conjunction with letters sent by a variety of other municipalities in coordination with the PEI, Federation of Municipalities. And what the municipalities are seeking is a forgiveness of that respective amounts that were essentially in error. The province provincial staff had indicated that there was an additional amount to those tax credits this year, and this municipality, as well as others, acted upon that after confirming with the province that there wasn't an error, the provincial staff, that there wasn't an error, and we're hoping to have that forgiven. We are 2 years out from negotiations on a renewal, 2 years overdue, on a renewal of that municipal tax credit amounts. So we're still hopeful that the province will forgive that amount. If not, our director and the CAO had the foresight in relation to the budget period to set aside some amounts, but again, that provides a deficit for other areas that money would otherwise have gone to further the interests of the community. So we're still hopeful, but regardless, we're going to, staff are working very hard and will be working very hard in negotiations with the province to update that long overdue increase to the tax credit. Staff are still working on a final claim for Fiona expenses in conjunction with the province. So hopefully that'll be resolved fairly soon as well. The director issued a request for quotations for construction financing to all of the area banks. So we're hoping to determine from that our best avenue for financing for several upcoming projects. And staff attended the Shape Stratford workshop, as well as worked on a frontage charge memo for the Finance Committee. And that was discussed today, and I'll just discuss it briefly here now, is that There are some residents who are charged a frontage fee in relation to additional water and sewer lines. Anyone, I believe the standard now is anyone below 100 feet of frontage is not charged a frontage fee, and anyone in excess of that is charged a frontage fee. So there's a number, maybe 125 feet, and anyone above 125 feet is charged. And the frontage fees essentially serve two purposes. It's to help offset the utility costs in relation to the provision of those services, but also to encourage people to minimize their lot sizes by subdividing and densifying and providing more lots, single family or multiple family dwelling lots within the community. So I just brought that up for their attention to get some their thoughts, and I will be bringing it up with council in the meeting in the fall, just to gauge council's view on that, as well as to whether we'll continue with that practice or whether we'll modify it or eliminate it. As well, staff continue their day-to-day tasks. As usual, they're very busy. So I'll open it up for questions. Some may have questions in relation to the consolidated financial statements report or other aspects of what I've spoken to here today. Otherwise, there's no resolutions, Deputy Mayor, and I'll turn it over to council for any questions.
Oh, is there any questions from the floor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
There, great. So we have the financial statements. Everything's you're done? Financial statements done?
They're all done.
Yep.
The final report is in and has been circulated to members of council and the mayor.
Okay. Okay, we'll move down to 12, Planning and Development Heritage. Councillor Jeff McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. I just
Got 6 or 7 resolutions here. You're a busy day here in the court today, probably.
As always, it's busy. Things are busy at planning, which is a good thing. It's always positive to see a lot of development happening within the town. So certainly a welcome thing, and happy to take that on. As I noted at the outset, our minutes have now been updated there to reflect our meeting from September the 5th. Appreciate that. It's a pretty short time, and so I expect nobody's really had an opportunity to go through those quite yet. Not to worry, we will be canvassing, I think, the bulk of the minutes throughout the discussions about the various resolutions that are for you for consideration today. Just want to note that our Director of Planning, Dale, is not here with us tonight. Acting Director for Planning, Phil Ruff, he is here, and he will hopefully be able to assist with any questions you might have about any of the upcoming resolutions that we're here to discuss. I'll begin just with a building permit summary. August was a fairly okay month for the town in terms of development. Really, I would suggest what's kind of saved us for August was a fairly large permit value on the commercial side of things, although that's not necessarily a new build. That's actually something that you've considered before. I think it was April that it was before you, but just getting around, I think, to getting that built out now, so that's why that's there. I think the number that I'm looking at is the year-to-date development value. Certainly we're well off the pace from 2022. Really lagging behind is the construction of, or the development permits attributed to single-family homes, I would suggest. Not to worry. I think there's probably a lot of indicators that would suggest that things are slowing down on the construction side. Labor is a concern, and interest rates continue to be a concern for investing. All of which is to say certainly nothing to worry about, but and too early to say whether this is going to be a continuing trend within the town. So with that in mind, I will move to our first resolution, which is somewhat of a warm-up one. It shouldn't be too controversial, I expect. This is an application from Mr. Dwayne Pino on behalf of the Stratford Youth Center. Now, this is resolution number PH024-2023. DP162-23, Stratford Youth Center at 57 Bunbury Road, PID 860379, a temporary use permit, and it is coming from the Planning and Heritage Committee and moved by myself as chair of that committee. And the resolution reads as follows. Whereas an application has been received from Dwayne Pino on behalf of the Stratford Youth Center to operate a temporary use, being a Cavendish Farms fry truck, which is proposed to be located at the Cotton Center property at 57 Bunbury Road, PID 860379, which is adjacent to the Gertrude Cotton Building as part of the town's annual Fall Fest, which takes place Friday, September 22nd to Sunday, September 24th, 2023. And whereas in accordance with Section 8.20 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw number 45, where council deems that there would be no health or safety risks to users and there would be no significant nuisance created for adjoining properties, council may issue a temporary development permit enabling the temporary erection of a building or structure and/or the temporary use of land to accommodate a celebration or event. And whereas the duration of a temporary use permit shall not exceed 30 days. And whereas council may attach conditions to a temporary use permit which are appropriate to ensure the health and safety of residents, visitors, and neighboring residents, or to minimize any potential nuisances. Be it resolved that approval be granted to an application received from Dwayne Pino on behalf of the Stratford Youth Center to operate a temporary use, being a Cavendish Farms fry truck, which is proposed to be located at the Cotton Center property, 57 Bunbury Road, PID 860379, adjacent to the Gertrude Cotton Building as part of the town's annual Fall Fest, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the temporary use shall operate and be located per the application description and site plan dated August 28, 2023, and the hours of operation shall be as follows. Friday, September 22nd from 12 noon to 5 p.m., Saturday, September 23rd from 12 noon to 5 p.m., and Sunday, September the 24th from 12 noon to 5 p.m. 2, that the applicant shall provide the town with a valid copy of the food service license or permit and any other relevant license or permits issued by the province prior to the use being located on the Cotton Center property. 3, that the temporary use shall be discontinued and removed as soon as reasonably possible and not exceeding 30 days following the issuance of the permit. 4, that the applicant shall ensure the cleanup of all debris around the location and the site is reinstated to its previous conditions prior to the event. This resolution does bear the recommendation of the Planning, Development, and Heritage Committee as discussed at a meeting held on September 5th, 2023. That is the motion. Looking for a seconder at this time.
Looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor.
Okay, we'll have a discussion.
So I think thank you, Phil, for bringing this up. You'll see that the location of the site is that small yellow rectangle located at the location. It speaks for itself. I think, as far as I understand, it will be staffed by people who know what they're doing, presumably, and not anybody here at council table. So that's the good news. It looks like to be a great event. I know everybody, I think, is very excited to have Fall Fest back. I'm sure this addition to Fall Fest will be a welcome sight for those who might be hungry. Subject to any questions, though, that is the motion for your consideration.
Okay, no other questions from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Move down to next.
Yes, this is the next resolution for your consideration. This is number PH 025-2023, SD 01C-23, an application from Andrew LeBlanc and Catherine Towers, located at 12 Winjow Drive, PID 529297, which is a one-lot subdivision. It comes from the Planning and Heritage Committee and is moved by myself as chair of that committee. And the resolution reads as follows. Whereas an application has been received from Andrew LeBlanc and Catherine Towers to subdivide parcel number 529297, approximately 47,350 square feet in total area, into 2 single detached dwelling lots within the low-density residential zone R1. The new lot 23-2 is proposed to have access from Aptos Drive, while the remaining lot 23-1 is proposed to maintain existing frontage on Winjow Drive. Whereas the new lot 23-2 is proposed to have a frontage of 77.36 meters, 253.8 feet, area of 2,253 meters squared, 24,251.09 square feet, and be serviced by both municipal sewer and water. The preliminary survey plan shows a proposed driveway location for the new lot. The actual location may be subject to change upon application for a development permit or provincial entranceway permit. The remaining land, lot 23-1, is proposed to maintain the existing frontage of 22.66 meters, 74.34 feet, is proposed to have an area of 2,146 square meters, 23,099.35 square feet, and is currently serviced by both municipal sewer and water. Both proposed lots exceed the minimum bylaw requirement of 22 meters or 72 feet of frontage and 700 square meters or 7,335 square feet in area. The 15-meter or 50-foot environmental buffer along the watercourse and building setbacks are shown on the preliminary survey plan to demonstrate sufficient remaining buildable area. In addition, the proposed subdivision conforms with section 4.3, permission to subdivide within the town of Stratford zoning and development bylaw number 45. Whereas in accordance with section 4.4, changes to existing lots of the town of Stratford zoning and development bylaw number 45. 4.4.1, no person shall reduce the dimensions or change the use of any lot in an approved subdivision where council deems these would be a detrimental effect on neighboring property owners. 4.4.2, where an application to subdivide land would change the dimensions or the use of a lot in an existing approved subdivision, council shall notify all property owners within 150 meters or 500 feet of the boundaries of the lot in writing, informing them of the details of the application and soliciting their comments. Whereas on August the 22nd, 2023, 55 notification letters were sent to property owners within 150 meters or 500 feet of the boundaries of the lot, informing them of the details of the application and soliciting their comments. As for the deadline for comments, September the 4th, 2023, 2 responses have been received which were not in favor of the proposed subdivision, due to residents having an understanding that the lot could not be further subdivided, impacted sightlines, and environmental impacts or tree removal concerns. Whereas, to mitigate some of the concerns, the Planning Committee has recommended the addition of a treed buffer to maintain the existing spruce trees currently located along Aptus Drive as described in condition below. Be it resolved that approval be granted to an application received from Andrew LeBlanc and Catherine Towers to subdivide parcel number 529297, which is approximately 47,350 square feet in total area, into 2 single detached dwelling lots located at 12 Windsor Drive and Aptus Drive, subject to the following conditions. 1, that a plan of survey be prepared by a professional surveyor licensed to practice in Prince Edward Island in conformance with the preliminary plan showing lot 23-1 and lot 23-2 being proposed severances of lands identified as PID 529297 in possession of Andrew D. LeBlanc and Catherine Towers as prepared by Bernard Land Surveyors, job number 22-144-A, dated August 22nd, 2023. 2, that the final plan of survey includes a treed buffer to maintain the spruce trees currently located along Aptus Drive. 3, that the sewer and water systems shall be designed in accordance with the Stratford Utility Corporation servicing standards, that the developer or property owner make payment of all applicable capital contribution fees as required by the Utility Corporation and in accordance with preliminary servicing comments as follows. A, install water and sewer services from the mains to dwelling at the property owner's developer's expense for the new lot 23-2. B, payment of the one-time domestic water supply contribution fee. C, payment of the one-time sewer treatment contribution fee. D, all water and sewer work to be coordinated and inspected by the utility. E, developer to confirm location and depth of sewer before setting foundation grades as sewer does not front the entire property along Windsor Drive. 4, that all other relevant provisions of the Town of Stratford zoning and development bylaw number 45 are met. And 5, that preliminary approval shall be valid for a period of 3 years. This resolution bears the recommendation of the Planning, Development, and Heritage Committee as discussed at a meeting held September the 5th, 2023. Just one small note there. I think in the first preamble, in the first recital, it says low-density residential zone, and then in brackets R1. That should probably be R1L then? No?
It should be R1.
So it should not be low-density residential?
Yes. The R1 is low-density residential. The R1L is large lot.
I didn't know if this was large lot or not. Okay, so, all right. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, we're just looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Jackson. Okay, discussion.
So we had a really great discussion about this. Phil, I don't know how you want to handle it, if you want to provide some overview to the council. And on the screen now currently is the ortho photo of the lot in question.
Yeah, so there was some discussion on this. I know there was some letters received from the neighbors with regard to the proposed development. There's a couple of constraints in this project. So along this backside, along the pond side, there is a 50-foot buffer zone
Can we bring up the
that's set
survey?
up.
Pardon?
So
Thanks, Wayne.
there was some
Yeah.
concerns. They tried to do they looked at subdivision last year. Initially, there's some concerns because the province came out with a buffer zone of 75 feet from the watercourses, and then there's some discussion with that. And what was determined was it's 75 feet if you're outside of a town limit. Within town limits, it's 50 feet. So the original concept would have worked at the 75-foot mark. With the new 50 feet works now. Concerns from residents, there were a couple revolved around views and protection of views, because Fiona took out a number of trees by the river or by the water, and now they could see the water, so they were trying to do the view protection, which through planning, that's actually exempt. It's not specifically stated in planning regulations, view protection, and the town does not have a view protection bylaw. View protection bylaw is not the easiest to set up. Vancouver, when they set up theirs, they took about 10 years to set up a view protection bylaw. And for a big city that's with a lot of planning staff, that's length of time, and then it all depends on what views you're trying to protect too, because they could, theoretically, this existing house could be moved up to that same area. So views, they are important to some people, but they're not necessarily protected under planning. So in terms of the proposal, there is enough area on the new lot for a house within the current setbacks. So planning is recommending that this be approved.
So just a couple additions to Phil's
go ahead.
comments. So you'll see in your meeting and in your agenda package, 12D.4 is the comments received from residents. And I'll just refer to them somewhat in brief in that there's 2 written comments, and in addition to those, I did receive a phone call from one of the writers of this, and we had a fairly good discussion. Certainly there are concerns expressed about the viewscape as it exists. As well, both letters refer to the fact that they were under the understanding that this would not happen at this location. And that's in relation to what Phil was saying, is that there had been some guidance issued from the province with respect to coastal areas that there would be a development buffer of 75 feet. But as Phil noted, and it's a very important distinction, especially for our town, is that that doesn't apply to municipalities with an official plan in place. And so the buffer would be the 15 meters or 50 feet, which is shown on the survey in the green area towards the back. So certainly plenty of room for development still. We did want to respect as best we could the viewpoints of the writers. It's rare when we receive written comments from our citizens, and we absolutely want to respect their wishes and make sure that their input is incorporated as best it can into the planning process. And the way we did that was we really wanted to make sure to preserve as much of the character of the Winjo and Aptos area as best we can. There are certainly some beautiful homes, and it's a beautiful development. It's a wonderful neighborhood. We thought the best way to do that while respecting our responsibilities at the planning level to ensure that we're really looking at the highest and best use of the land. We're considering the housing situation. We're considering essentially the character of the neighborhood. We're considering all of these sound planning principles that we're tasked to consider. Is that the best way to do that while respecting the views of the citizens is to include requirement in the survey plans for that tree buffer line. You're going to look, there's a photo that shows the trees in question. It's at 12D5 of your planning package. And you'll see that's actually a very lovely row very
Trees.
mature spruce trees.
Yeah.
And so we're looking to maintain those in the subdivision such that it preserves the character of the neighborhood. I mean, it's a beautiful streetscape as you're driving down. If anybody's had the opportunity to drive down that road, it promotes a sense of calm, I'm going to suggest, when you're driving down it, and it doesn't interrupt the sight lines all the way down to the harbor. Certainly, it's going to impact somewhat of the viewscapes, there's no doubt. But in the end, as Phil said, viewscapes are a very tricky thing to regulate, and so we did not want to go down a path which could lead us in error. The other germane sub-item in your agenda package, and I think this was prepared by Sarah in our planning department, was it's number 12D-3, and it shows essentially a table of permission to subdivide, and it describes all of the ways in which this proposed subdivision does conform with their planning and development bylaw. So clearly it's a well-considered subdivision request, and I think planning staff is very thorough in its consideration of it. So certainly it does, those are the reasons I would suggest that it does bear the recommendation of the Planning and Development and Heritage Committee. But certainly open to comments and suggestions or any discussion about this.
Just one question I have, where you said the complaints from the residents and two were in writing and you had a conversation with one of those folks.
Yes.
When they referenced that they were under the impression or had the idea or told, is it traced back, like, who were they told by?
That we're not sure. I think they've been there for some time, the residents in question. I can't say for sure. I think they were just under that general impression because I think they were aware at least of that guidance from the province that they had issued about the coastal buffers in unincorporated areas being 75 feet. I don't think, I can't say for sure, Councillor, where that attribution came from or where that knowledge came from. Phil, I don't know if you have any information about that.
No, nothing confirmed. It was speculated, it was based around that 75, 50-foot buffer distance from what the province stated initially when they came out with their coastal plan like 3 years ago now. And now they've actually clarified it's down 50 within city limits or town limits. So we suspect it's around that, but we can't necessarily confirm that.
Bottom line,
So-
we can't identify
Okay.
that it
Where it
came from
was-
any communications from town staff or anything of that nature.
And that was that wasn't in place 30, 40, 25 years ago? Were there rules surrounding those lots then, just out of interest?
That I cannot say. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure on timing on that.
Yeah, it predates our existence as a town, I think, too. I think if I may, preserving those trees, I think that's important.
Yes, yeah.
You know, I think it's a lot of places across the town, people have the idea that there's not gonna be development by them. But it's kind of refreshing to hear that it does meet all the criteria of the planning committee, and I think, I'm not an expert, I feel confident in the recommendation that they've provided, and that's why I seconded this motion. I think it's, you know, if we can provide more housing that fits in the neighborhood, that's great.
Yeah, and I think the operative word there is fits in the neighborhood. This is not going to be some 6-story monstrosity or anything like that. It's going to be another, presumably single-family dwelling. So I don't think it's going to be out of character with the neighborhood, and I think it's in terms of the development, it's a fairly sustainable use of that land.
Well, I think if you go down Aptos Drive, like the houses down, especially at the bottom, are, you know, what people would call like $1 million house, or in today's market, you know, obviously knock down every single tree if they want to do that, and there's not much we can do about that. And so, you know, hopefully that person wouldn't do that, but because we don't have that policy in place, if they decide that those trees are in their way, away they go. And that does not have to be, cannot be enforced by us, but just hopefully in good faith that they'll keep them.
Is that still the case if it's part of the
Conditions?
resolution for approval of the subdivision? I understand it that they would be agreeing to maintain those trees. It'd be different if somebody bought a property with the trees on it and they weren't subject to any conditions, and if they would be at liberty to do what they want. But am I incorrect in assuming that that's part of the conditions for approval?
That's correct.
And-
That tree buffer
Yeah.
be maintained and actually incorporated into the
Yeah,
survey. plan.
okay.
Yeah.
Does the wording, Councilor McDonald, does it say that that is our wish that it is, or does it say that it has to be?
I'll just pull up the resolution just.
But the final plan of survey includes a tree buffer to maintain the spruce trees currently located along Aptos Drive.
Yeah, so it's fairly. It's fairly
Defined in there,
Incorporated.
okay.
And I would caution us on, like, we have to assume folks are going to follow the rules here. Like, I
Absolutely.
understand trees,
Yeah,
best laid plans here, and Fiona comes through and knocks down all the trees.
right.
Again, that's not going to happen. We, they're committing to that, so we have to.
In good faith,
Yeah, I
understand.
mean, yeah.
The residents of the community, we found through different sources a great concern by the residents of the community for the number of trees that we lost due to Fiona. And there's been inquiries in relation to the town's efforts to reforest and and the town's efforts, the planning department's efforts to maintain as many trees as possible through the planning process and subdivision approvals. So the residents are concerned about that. So I would think that the proponents of this subdivision application would be very interested in maintaining those trees, and I don't think that would be an issue. But at any rate, it's subject to those conditions for approval of the subdivision itself. But I don't know that we have to put that in every case. But certainly the planning department will be looking closely at applications to ensure that where possible trees are maintained. We don't want to lose any more than we already have.
And those are beautiful trees. So I imagine the landowner certainly would say, we got a head start here. These trees are wonderful. You know, and they withstood the last hurricane, so it's pretty hardy. So it's a good thing to keep. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, there's motion on the floor, or we've got a second motion, now discussion. I'll just propose the motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion accepted.
Thank you.
Move down to the next one, Councillor
So
McDonald.
the next one for your consideration is, so I'm going to just give a bit of a preamble before I get into these next two resolutions, which are PH026 and PH027. They came in somewhat blended at the time. Essentially, the developers are looking to do a few different things all in one. So what we thought was best was to split out these two resolutions, being 26 and 27. Essentially, we'll deal with 26 first, which I'll just bring it up, and maybe as part of the discussion, there's going to be some overlap between 26 and 27, but I'll start with the resolution, at least on number 26. We can have our discussion, and then we can move on to 27. So this is resolution number PH026-2023, stacked townhouse and general textual amendments to the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw number 45. It comes from the Planning and Heritage Committee. My name's not there, but I will move this as chair of the committee. And the resolution reads as follows. Whereas the Planning Department is proposing several text amendments involving the incorporation of, quote, stacked townhouse dwellings, associated lot standards, and other general housekeeping amendments to clarify the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw number 45. Whereas there are four main components to the proposed amendment as follows. 1. Add a definition for, quote, stacked townhouse dwelling and amend the definitions for, quote, multi-attached dwellings and, quote, duplex dwellings. 2. Add, quote, stacked townhouse dwellings to zones that currently permit, quote, townhouse dwellings. 3. Add lot development standards for, quote, stacked townhouse dwellings. 4. adjusts the quote townhouse dwellings use within the medium density residential zone. And whereas pursuant to the Provincial Planning Act and Section 3 of the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw, Council must hold a public meeting to receive comments from the public on the proposed bylaw amendments. And be it resolved that a public meeting be held on October 16th, 2023, tentatively, to solicit public input from residents on the proposed amendments involving the incorporation of, quote, stacked townhouse dwellings, associated lot standards, and other general housekeeping amendments to help clarify the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw number 45. This resolution bears the recommendation of the Planning and Heritage Committee as discussed at a meeting held on September the 5th, 2023. That is the motion.
I need a seconder. Second by Councillor Dowling.
Thank you. So, discussion on this matter. This comes about as a proposed development that's occurring at the Kelly Heights subdivision.
Right.
Oh, Phil, feel free certainly to take it away.
Okay, yeah, so the first component is to deal with the stacked townhouse dwellings. So stacked townhouse dwellings were actually added to the zoning bylaw with the Grey Group development when the core area mixed use zone came in.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Wendy, I'm wondering if you could bring up 12F2, which is the concept for stacked townhomes. Just to see it on the screen while you're speaking, Phil. Sorry.
So the use was added in there, but it was never actually defined. So we're actually bringing in a definition. So once the picture comes up, I'll show you what a stacked townhouse is. The use itself isn't actually new. There is a good example of one in Charlottetown on Queen Street, just north of Euston. You have the...
It's not, it's frozen or something, I'm just trying to reset it.
Okay.
You keep talking and
Okay.
keep working on it.
So it pop up. Okay.
Phil, could I say, fair to say, stacked houses like Williams Gate?
No, Williamsgate is standard townhouses. So Williamsgate is 2 stories, but there it's a townhouse complex. So easiest way to think of it is the second floor of Williamsgate would be a separate unit.
Okay.
So a stacked townhouse is a standard townhouse setup, but you have one set of units on the bottom, one set of units up top.
Okay.
Are there any examples of that in Kelly Heights now?
No.
No.
There's one being proposed, and that's the second resolution for rezoning. The developer is looking at doing 2 buildings of 10, so 5 across. So this is actually a stacked townhouse. So you can actually see, if you count up the number of doors, it's 6 doors, but it looks like 3 townhouses. So you have 1 unit ground floor and 1 unit second floor. So this door would go into the ground floor, this door goes up into the second floor. So it's a stacked townhouse. So this amendment is going to add a definition for a stacked townhouse. So they're side by side and then 1 unit on top of the other. We're also changing the definition for duplex to line up with how it's been defined through planning law, dating back to as early as 1900. And then also just changing the definition for multi-attached dwellings. It's listed differently in the zones as to how it is in the definitions. So the second step is we're adding stacked townhouse dwellings to any zones that currently permit townhouse dwellings. So stacked townhouses and townhouses are similar developments. They can be in similar neighborhoods. And then we're adding lot development standards for stacked townhouses. So the only real difference here is tied into the minimum lot area required per unit. So townhouse typically requires 300 square meters of land per unit. With stacked townhouses, we're looking at dropping that a little bit to 250 per unit. But that actually, it seems like you'd actually end up with smaller lots, but in fact, a stacked townhouse unit actually requires 500 square meters. So the area required is actually more, but you can get more units on site. So I think in an acre, you get 13 townhouses or 16 stacked.
Okay.
So you get more units, but the buildings are more compact.
Yeah. So I think we had this, part of the discussion that planning on September the 5th was the practical reality is that this will update the definition for townhouses throughout our whole town. But the unfortunate practical reality is that for townhomes that might have already been developed already, it's not an easy renovation to create a stacked townhouse because the lot standards are such that they're likely developed in such a way that the lot standards wouldn't be able to met with the new stacked townhouse definition. It's possible, and there are certainly some examples I imagine that they can, but it's not foreseen by planning. And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is going to create some sort of gold rush in which we're going to see a whole lot of applications for intensification of already existing townhomes.
So, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so it's not necessarily going to impact existing, it's just new developments. Given the increased lot area required, it'd be difficult for an existing townhouse to be converted up to a stacked townhouse. There might be a couple of occasions where that might work in a couple of the planned unit residential zones potential, but then you also have to go through converting a two-story townhouse, getting that through building code would get a little difficult. So it's most likely going to only impact new development, not existing.
Just a couple of questions. I'm sorry if I missed this. There's a lot to digest here. Are the current townhouses, in the definition, townhouse dwellings, is there a parking requirement associated with those?
Yes.
And if so, is it changing in the stacked townhouse dwelling requirement?
Yes, there is. So currently, stacked townhouses require 2 parking spaces per unit. What we're looking at doing for stacked townhouses is dropping that a little bit. So you have 1 dedicated per unit plus 1 guest. So instead of having 2 for every unit, you could get 1.5 per unit.
So we're dropping the requirements for parking, and in theory, there's twice as many people that live in the same space? Just for understanding.
Yes, so there'd be fewer parking spaces, but more units. So a townhouse complex of, say, 10 units would require 20 parking spaces.
Yeah.
A stacked townhouse requires 15. My math is correct. 10, yeah, 15. Because a lot of the times parking is a difficult one. A lot of townhouse dwellings, you have more parking than is actually required.
And this is the part where I'm worried that I may have missed this. Have we had people apply for this particular iteration of townhouse?
Just one.
Just the one?
That's the next resolution coming down.
Okay.
There's
Yes.
Yeah, it's coming up
I was
in-
confused here.
Yeah, it's coming down
That's why
here.
we're doing this. And just so we're all clear, though, this is just
A public
a
meeting.
public meeting.
Yeah.
Is
This
is it fair to say that we haven't had this request for development, this type of development in the past?
No. This is the first I've heard of an application come through of this nature.
And there is among developers in particular, and among communities, and certainly among Stratford, a desire for densification.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what comes out of the public meetings in relation to the input from the residents.
Good comment.
But I think,
Yep.
you know, it fits within the objectives, especially within that zone that the town has for future development. But like I say, I think, you know, the public input, I look forward to the public meeting on it and see what input we get there.
Just to clarify, within in the zones, there's actually, I think, 8 zones we're looking at adding it into. So the residential, year 2, the year 3 zones, the planned unit residential, the Mason Road residential, a couple of mixed-use zones. The only other zone the only zone that currently permits it is in the new Grey Group development along the Transcanada, the
Yes, that's right.
urban core zone. So.
Yeah.
So Councillor Chamber brought up a very valid point, a good point in relation to
Parking.
parking impacts, and it'd be interesting to get a bit more information on that as well, as to how that might, how such a development would accommodate a reasonable amount of vehicles for the units. It'd be at least one vehicle per unit. In some cases, there might be more than one. Where would they park if not at that particular facility? Certainly not on the street.
With parking and developments, quite often I know in other places work, it's always been a big discussion, especially with the parkings. A lot of the times it comes down to the residents living there. If they know they only have one parking space, they only have one vehicle. So it comes down to how much do you provide. Because you can theoretically provide 4 parking spaces per unit, they get 4 vehicles. So it's always a challenge of how do you offset what people want and what. So if you only provide 2, you get 2. If you provide 1.5, you get.
You know that in theory that is effective, but I think in practice that sometimes drives parking into other areas, whether they're business parking lots that are close by or on the street, that sort of thing. But I think that's certainly, as Councillor Traynor brought up, that's certainly a key factor for consideration in relation to this. And you know, I'd be interested to see how the developer plans to address that, or whether it's a concern. And I know with other development within the proposed Grey Group development, that was an issue as well. And there was talk around how people would adapt. And I would suggest that, yes, people would adapt in that more concentrated area, but an area where it's a mixture of residential zoning from duplexes to triplexes, quadplexes, et cetera. This type of development might drive the parking elsewhere, because although you can assume that people would only move into a place if they were to stick with one vehicle parking, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the case. And if you have a family with 3 or 4 vehicles, where do they go? But anyway, that's when Councillor Traynor brought that up, it piqued my curiosity, and I think it's a very good point to examine.
Yeah, I have to agree with that one, with Councillor Chandler and Councillor Dowling. I think in theory that sounds like it would work, but the reality with, I mean, I work with a couple of young gentlemen that the only way they can afford a place, which, you know, with all these new developments, Stratford, Charlottetown, wherever it is, design, but it's just by, you know, the economy and the housing crisis and all those things, and it's nothing to see 3 cars in one, you know, in one lane. So love to think it would work. Hope it would as things cool down. But I be interesting to hear what the public meeting says.
Thank you for all those comments. Anything else before we put a vote to the public meeting?
Okay, all in favor of a public meeting? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Councillor McDonald.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Excellent discussion, everybody, and certainly I think it's important for us to refer to these minutes from this meeting moving forward, just so we're all mindful of some of these discussion points. I think depending on what happens at the public meeting, we are certainly probably going to see this again, and really look forward to incorporating your comments and your input on this one moving forward. Okay, moving to the sister resolution of this, which is PH 027-2023, RZ 001-23 from Grove Developments Limited. This is a zoning bylaw amendment, text amendments and zoning map amendment. Looking to move from R1 to R2, which is a 20-unit townhouse complex off Swallow Drive, incorporating PIDs 912-410, 677-344, 677-336, 677-328, and 190082. Comes from the Planning and Heritage and Development Committee and is moved by myself as chair of that committee. Whereas an application has been received from Grove Development Limited requesting to rezone 5 lots located off Swallow Drive from the low-density residential R1 zone to the medium-density residential R2 zone, and add the use quote stacked townhouse dwellings to the R2 zone. And whereas the applicant is proposing to construct two 10-unit stacked townhouse complexes across 4 of the lots and use the 5th lot as access to each lot. Stacked townhouses are currently only permitted in the new urban core zone and core mixed-use zone, and whereas pursuant to the Provincial Planning Act and Section 3 of the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw, Council must hold a public meeting to receive comments from the public on the proposed application. Be it resolved, therefore, that a public meeting be held on October 16th, 2023, tentatively, to solicit input from residents on an application to rezone parcel numbers 912-410, 677-344, 677-336, 677-328, and 190082, approximately 2.53 acres in total, from the low-density residential R1 zone to the medium-density residential R2 zone. This resolution bears the recommendation of the Planning, Development, and Heritage Committee as discussed at a meeting held on September the 5th, 2023. So that is a resolution as moved by myself. I wonder if I could have a seconder.
I get a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Downey.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Okay, so it might be best to lead the discussion, and Phil's still at the lectern, and I expect he'll guide us through it, but just to have on the screen, Wendy, if possible.
This is another public meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 12F-3, which is the preliminary site plan. So this shows, could zoom out a little bit.
They're 10 units each, eh?
Just for clarity, sorry, is this showing like these are the units and
Okay.
that's parking?
You got it.
So
Yeah.
this is like 2 home, 2, okay.
Okay, yeah.
So this concept was actually the original concept is going to do 4 buildings of 5 units each, standard townhouses. And then it was suggested, actually, John Mant, the surveyor, suggested looking at the stacked townhouses. So the new orientation, instead of going east-west, assuming left of the screen is north, he's actually going to orientate the buildings so they're actually going front onto this road here. So they'd be running east-west, they'd face east-west. And then this way there'll be a buffer zone to the residential above. So they're going to turn the buildings facing east-west, and they're going to be 5 units wide, 2 buildings high. And then using the same concept as the example of the 3 units, the applicant is planning to do a color code system. So from the street, it looks like separate buildings as opposed to all one block. And then parking will be on the front onto the road. So this.
So they drive in here, right?
Yes, yeah.
Drive in. Drive in here.
Yeah, but as Phil said, it's hard to conceptualize this because we don't have anything new from the developer, but
Okay.
this actually isn't what it's gonna look like. As Phil's noted,
Yeah.
the buildings are actually gonna be facing towards the road rather than facing inwards, if that makes sense. To kind of more line up with the concept view of what stacked townhouses might look like as shown in that photograph at 12F-2. So they're not facing inwards anymore and at each
So
other.
they're all like this way, parking on the street, and then they all face this road?
They'd be facing the street.
And then
yeah.
all the backyards face the same way?
Yes, yeah. So it might, to help look at it from a bird's eye view, I'm wondering if we could show 12F-1.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, 12F-1.
So these two that we just looked through, the PH 026 and 27. So am I wrong? Will it be like 40 units here, like 20 and 20? Is that what it is?
No, it's
10, 10.
2 tens.
Two tens.
2 10.
Like 40 altogether,
Yeah.
like 5 up and down, 5 up and down?
No.
No, it's 1. Wait.
It's five and 5 double. So okay. So
it's
20.
2 buildings, 10 units each.
Yeah, 20 units.
20
That was
units.
the original concept. The original concept, he had 5 buildings of standard townhouses. Now he's looking at 2 groups of 10 facing east-west as opposed to north-south.
So 20,
So
not-
he's actually revamped his unit. So where the road is, the buildings are going to be on the same, they're going to be parallel to the road.
It's too bad there wasn't just like a bit of a picture or something. It's just, it's kind of hard to figure all this as far as,
There'll be 20 units in each building, were there not?
that's what I thought.
10 units in each building. There are only 5 units.
There we
wide.
go.
So this shows, the area curtailed in blue shows where these things are going to be happening, or at least the subject of the public meeting. So it shows the proposed roadway that would be extended off of Swallow, which would allow access to the stacked townhouses. And I mean, I think it would be fair, very fair to say that at the public meeting, it would be the expectation from the town that the developer would present a new, at least a preliminary survey or a preliminary site plan showing exactly what they're going to look like, rather than, you know, the photo we have here today, which
Yeah.
all it says is to be rotated.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna, I mean, that would certainly be the expectation of the town if the developer wants, I think some positive reactions from the town on their plans. But again, understanding, of course, that this is just for the public meeting, and understanding that it's not going to look quite as it does in the ortho photo as shown. But this map shows a fairly good representation of where this is going to go, understanding that the units in question would face out onto that new roadway coming off of Swallow Drive. So developers really looking for 2 things between 26 and 27. Looking, first of all, we need to have that land rezoned from R1 to R2 to allow for the densification, and then allowing for the updated definitions of townhomes to allow for the stacked townhome concept to allow for that construction.
Okay. Everyone understand? Yep. So it's discussion on the floor, and I'll make, ready for a motion? We motion to accept.
Councilor Jackson.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
So, yeah, without seeing a kind of a better view of it, it's hard to, like Councillor Cox says, hard to understand.
Yeah.
At our fire company meeting the other night, though, there was some concern amongst the firefighters of some of the recent developments, especially the one right across. I forget the, it's not Briar Jones, is it?
Oh, like up from there?
Just across from there. So when you, and this kind of brings in the parking idea, if we're kind of, and I understand the standards, new standards are you know, a spot and a half, whatever it is. If it continues to be that these folks, you know, the rents are high, people are kind of piling up to afford them.
I know.
There's some valid concerns from the fire company around folks parking on the street and trucks actually having access to get in and put out a fire with this density. So it's not that it can't work, but we got to be really careful around parking and the idea. And this is where I'd love to hear from the public around what is actually being seen. Because if this is, it's one thing to have this in a new development, but if we allow it across town for all these townhouses, do stacked townhouses and kind of tighten up the parking, it could make a problem even worse, potentially. It may not. But I think they should we should invite a rep for sure from the fire company or some of them, and I know we would anyway, just to express their thoughts on this, because they did bring up some valid concerns. There's some tight spots in the town right now for some of their trucks. And I just want to make sure that is explored, you know.
Yeah, in the background, yeah.
I know like Briar Jones, for example, you go in and you go up a little hill, then there's a cul-de-sac at the top, but it'd be very tough for a fire truck to have to back. You know, it's the same as the new build on Stratford Road, the garden home build. You know, they're just developing new rows in there now, but there's only one entrance, one exit. So if you went in there, it's a fairly tight spots for fire trucks.
Yeah, and it's not a design issue, it's just a practical, it's how things are actually playing out.
Yeah.
These things all make sense, and we have all the folks that know what they're doing to
No, absolutely.
You know, but in reality, we are seeing a lot
Yeah.
more, and, you know, Charlottetown has a parking problem. We will have, if we don't have it already, just something we need to keep an eye on, because if we don't look at it now, it could be a major issue later on. And I think it'll be handled. I think we'll find out a way. I just think the idea of someone having, 4 people living in a place and have 1.5 spots, in today's economy and everything, I don't see it. But interesting to see what the public says.
It's good that we have the public meeting, because in that area, I'm familiar with everyone walking, and singles, there's doubles there, triples and townhouses and everything else mixture, and there's people in that area with duplexes, singles, and there's no tries, don't think, but anyway, be a good discussion in public meeting, residents there.
Just one comment. Wondering whether, given that although this is a new concept to Stratford, I think you had mentioned that there were other communities that had incorporated this zoning. Wondering if there's any that are comparable to Stratford in size, and what their experience has been in relation to issues arising from that type of development. I think if we could glean the information from the experience of other communities, that might help us in our decision, but also would help in relation to public information at the public meetings, if that's possible.
No, it's a good comment.
Yeah, as Phil noted, there is a concept of this that's present in Charlottetown, just north of Houston off of Queen. I don't know the parking situation there though, Phil. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
it
I'm
or
not sure off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I think Charlottetown's the only place on the island that I came across this use permitted. There's some down, I know Halifax permits it in certain neighborhoods. They actually have, I believe, a townhouse neighborhood in particular. And then a couple, there'd be probably some in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia that I haven't come across, but currently only Charlottetown is the only one that permits it.
But I think it's a good idea at either the public meeting or if this comes back to us again, to have some representative examples for us to consider, or for the public to consider as well. I think that's a fairly good idea.
I think it'd be good if the experience in those communities is that parking, although there was concerns over parking turned out not to be an issue, and there's no reason to believe that wouldn't be the experience here. But same token, if they say, it's something we'd never do if we had to do it over again, then that's valuable for us to know as well.
I remember going through this exercise with parking somewhat with the urban core and core mixed use zones. At first, if you recall, there was, in some instances, I think we were looking at no parking minimums, because that's what some municipalities are moving towards. We weren't ready to do that, and I stand by that. But I think the issues are identified around parking, and the potential issues about fire, about affordability, are absolutely germane to the discussion. I think we should absolutely keep that in mind when we're looking at this in the future.
Just one last thing, Councillor. It was on the, like Charlottetown has, meter folks, and they're policing their parking spaces. Some of us know better than others. But it's important. And so in this conversation come up around traffic and the CBC story last week, one of the measures that some of them took, so Summerside talked about their increase in, like, they put together a 3-person traffic unit, so they're really kind of hammered down on that, which has worked for them, but that's a whole different type of policing than we're used to here. And it's not something the RCMP is probably going to want to get into, so I think bringing all the folks to the table, understanding their concerns. In the current model, we're not going to have RCMP issuing tickets and towing folks. So just all of these things need to be considered, because if we make this decision and we go forward, and it may be a terrific one, but it may need some tweaking. So, sorry, Councillor.
On snow removal, everything, like when there's street parking.
Good point.
One question I have, it's in addition, or just something I've been meaning to ask. Sometimes when I notice in our agenda package, the site plan, what is the word I'm looking for? I would love to have a broader photo that we could scroll or like expand. I often find I'm going somewhere else to look, like at the site. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does anybody else find that? Like,
More
it's hard to-
zoomed out view, basically.
A more
Yeah.
zoomed in, like that we can zoom in, but like, it is hard to sometimes get perspective, or even that we don't see that, oh, right, that's exactly by this thing, which is also, like, I
You're-
just love to have a bigger,
You're looking for some more context sometimes in terms of where these new developments might be.
yeah,
Fair, yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Okay, we can go back to the motion. Motion is on the, I'm going to make a motion to accept the public meeting on, what's the date, Jeff?
Tentatively October 16th.
October
And it's
16th?
Tentatively because
Sure.
it all depends on when we get the notices out, and there's certain amounts of times that we have to abide by under our bylaws. So that's the plan.
So
Just
all
one-
in favor?
Well, just one last question,
Okay.
Your Worship. So
Okay.
the date of the public meeting is not the same date as or is it the same date as the first issue we just dealt with?
Both would be
Same meeting?
handled on the same.
Yeah, the
Okay.
same meeting,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
16th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for clarification, the first meeting is in relation to the concept of, or
The
the.
definition.
Stack.
The definition.
In relation to adding that definition
Yeah.
to,
Stacked home.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second meeting is in relation to this specific application.
Yes, appreciating though, of course, that the discussions are going to be intertwined as they are here
Oh, yeah.
this evening. But, you know, they had to be separate public meetings because the interests that are attached to PH 026 about the definition of stacked townhomes, that's a much more broader interest than that's captured in 027. So we may have, in actual fact, more people turn out for 26 and have some input than leave, if that makes sense.
Just one small question, Phil. Could the developer put a townhouse on it? Quads?
Yes, yeah, so
That's what I'm saying, you can go
this
from
will be
16 to
going
10,
to
right?
be- Yeah, so he's looking at converting between the R1 and the R2.
Yeah,
At the moment, he's looking at doing a stacked townhouse. Let's say for some reason the stacked townhouses don't pass, he does have a concept plan to go down to a standard townhouse using the full building setup.
exactly.
We'd prefer to do the stacked ones, and then this way it actually makes a smaller building footprint, and then protects more of the buffer around the neighbors.
I think just like we have lots of questions and concerns, especially about parking, I think the public here in Stratford will definitely have the same sort of, and there'll be some great questions come out of that. But I know, like somebody just mentioned Halifax, I know in Tintagel and Hammonds Plains and St. Margaret's area outside Halifax, stacked townhouses are becoming a bit of a norm in those areas. And, you know, where Montreal and Toronto, stacked townhouses have been around for decades and decades. And older townhouses in big urban cities, parking was on the street for a lot of these places. And I know for us that's not an option. We have to make sure the parking is under control. So I look forward to those meetings. I think there's all kinds of great discussions and questions that'll come out. But certainly it just shows you what's happening in Stratford. We're moving forward. We're getting all these new concepts and ideas, and it's nice to see that we're able to bring that to the public and let them have their questions answered also.
Thank you. Yeah.
Final comment for me, I agree with what Councillor Cox is saying by and large, but we also have to be mindful that a lot of communities through a particular type of growth have gotten into having to designate on-street parking for residents and that sort of thing. And as Councillor Jackson pointed out, you know, we don't have the capacity for enforcement unless we get into a commissioner type model.
That's right.
I don't know that we want to go down that road, but by the same token, we are looking for densification. We just want to make sure that that densification, as it develops, isn't going to bring about other problems that we don't have in the community and don't want to have to deal with. So, yeah, it's an interesting concept, and we'll see how it flushes out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to wait for Jill, will they, or?
Well, we could just
You
say.
think, Jerry?
We're fine.
We're
Yeah,
good?
I think we'll be all right.
Okay,
We can
what's,
call the question.
so the motion's on the floor, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, right on the table, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion accepted.
Okay, so we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at the public meeting on tentatively October the 16th.
Put in
Okay.
phone calendars. Yep.
Resolution PH 028-2023. This is in your package at 12G and the associated attachments to that. It is PH 228-2023, RZ 002-23. Roberts Retirement Pros Incorporated, a zoning bylaw amendment and conditional use R2 to R3, looking for a 40-unit apartment complex off Rankin Drive at PID 464719. It comes from the Planning, Development, and Heritage Committee. It is moved by myself as chair of that committee. And the resolution reads as follows. Whereas an application has been received from Roberts Retirement Pros Incorporated to rezone parcel number 464719, approximately 0.81 acres in total, from the medium density residential R2 zone to the multiple unit residential R3 zone, for the purpose of constructing a 40-unit multiple attached dwelling. And whereas this rezoning request will require the following amendment to be considered. Zoning and Development Bylaw. An amendment to the official zoning map to change parcel number 464719 from medium density residential R2 zone to the multiple unit residential R3 zone. Whereas the proposed 40-unit multiple attached dwelling is deemed as a conditional use, being an apartment over 12 units in the proposed R3 zone. Whereas the concept plan has been reviewed and the following variances were identified as being required for the proposed 40-unit multiple attached dwelling. Minimum lot area, a variance of 47.21%. Required area of 6,210 meters. Proposed area, 3,278 square meters. Maximum building height, variance of 85.71%. Permitted, which is 10.5 meters or 35 feet. Proposed, 19.8 meters, which is 65 feet. Maximum density, variance of 40% after a 20% bonusing to the number of units with the provision of a minimum of 75% underground parking spaces. Permitted, 24 units. Proposed, 40 units. Whereas pursuant to the Provincial Planning Act and Section 3.2.3 of the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw, Council must hold a public meeting to receive comments from the public on the proposed application. Notwithstanding, Council retains the right under Section 3.2.8 of the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw to deny any amendment request without holding a public meeting if such request is deemed to be inconsistent with this bylaw or the official plan. Be it resolved that a public meeting be scheduled to solicit input from residents on this application to resolve parcel number 464719, approximately 0.81 acres in total, from the medium density R2 zone to the multiple unit residential R3 zone for the purpose of constructing a 40-unit multiple attached dwelling. This resolution does not bear the recommendation of the Planning and Heritage Committee as discussed at a meeting held on September the 5th, 2023.
So-
That is the motion.
I'll need a seconder.
Now, I appreciate that this motion, no one probably wants to second it, but again, understanding that the recommendation from Planning and Heritage Committee. Thank you. Mr.
Seconded by
Council.
Councillor Downey. So, discussion.
How many floors?
Well, it's not small.
There's a lot of photographs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information there.
So here's what I would suggest, Councillor Cox. Phil's here. We had a fairly good discussion, though it was a somewhat brief discussion at planning about this. I will let Phil speak to it, bearing in mind that this building would likely be the largest in Stratford. It would be the largest in Stratford currently.
Yeah, so with regards to I'll answer the question, it's proposed at 5 stories. It's going to be stacked 5 stories on the Hopeton side and 3 on the back side. So in terms of height-wise, maximum building height in the R3 zone, which what they're trying to go to is 35 feet. This will be at 65 feet. That's an estimate based on the drawing submitted. So currently the tallest building in town is 53.5 feet. There's the apartment complexes. This is down by the waterfront. The next highest, the highest actually is currently under construction on Irving. That'd be at 63 feet, I believe, at final build out, but that's a mixed use zone, so that's got a larger commercial first floor. And in a much higher density and much larger development area. And and then it's also next to the urban core zones, which are projected to have higher buildings. So in terms of the variance required just for the building alone is just shy of 86% variance.
To give you a sense of the scale, I'm wondering, Wendy, if we can, to pull up 12G-6.
So Scott did a basic elevation drawings. This is looking from pretty much the Rankin Houghton corner, looking at that building. So the buildings in yellow are actually the current houses in the area. So they're 1, maybe 2 stories in some cases. The one's long Rankin on the left side. So it's going to have a much larger height in the area. Currently, the tallest building in the area, there's a couple across the road on, I forget the name of the street. Horton, yeah.
Fort Drive, yeah.
And those are 2.5 stories, but the half story is buried. So it's the 2 stories above ground, then 1 story below. So this is going to be twice that, and then almost, in some cases, 5 times the height of the buildings in the area. So it'd be
there's a lot of like high value variance requests for it, so I mean, it certainly doesn't, it's not consistent with the developments in the area, even the apartment units in Horton, which wouldn't be consistent.
Nope.
One key concern, I'm sure it was discussed at the committee, is the traffic patterns in relation to that area, given that it's on a bit of a walking subdivision. I think there's some possibilities down the road for a traffic circle there, if I'm not mistaken, but right now I think that volume of traffic would certainly be problematic for that area. That's my thought.
Thank you. Certainly looking forward to hearing from everybody else. I'll reserve my comments, I think, towards the end perhaps, but yes, any other comments at this point?
Yeah, and I agree with Councillor Dowling, and I did a good chat with Phil today on specific concerns I had around this. And it is to what Councillor Dowling was saying, they're asking for significant variances well beyond kind of the probably acceptable on our part right now. It is a small lot, and it's, I fully respect the decision and the recommendation from the Planning and Heritage Committee not to go forward right now with this. So again, out of character with the neighborhood, just significant departure from the intended use of that area. So.
And you look at the problems there, shading too, or shadowing, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's all kinds of different aspects there that they haven't touched on, but certainly when we go back to stacked townhouses, to me, that would be an area that maybe a stacked townhouses could fit in an area like that, or possibly be looked at more than this 40 unit. To me, it just seems like it's quite a spot to put it in. And it's not in character with what's there now. So I agree with what the councillors here are saying.
Just a question I have, CO Crosby. By voting yes here, it means that we're voting against the public meeting?
A vote for yes would be to move it to the public meeting.
Pardon?
I think a vote for yes would be to move it to the public meeting.
Okay. Okay. Voting for no.
You have a motion on the floor and a seconder, so you have the vote after that, whether you want to move forward with it or not. So it's.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Chan?
I think it is asking for significant variances. I think when we look at its placement, we know that this current intersection is one that needs future changes. We've all expressed concern here and further up on the Bunbury Road, and I think that the only reason that I'm not torn. I mean, obviously, we want to be committed to providing more housing for everyone, but specifically for seniors and accessible housing. But at the same time, we, I think, are committed to the current residents who live there and the quality of life for the residents who live there and the quality of life for the seniors who would potentially be in a building like that. And I think that it's not the right space.
Okay. Phil, I'm just going to ask you, and this is for the record, I suppose, as a professional planner, does this development and this proposal accord with sound planning principles?
So from planning point of view, no. So our recommendation is to deny the rezoning and the development for a number of reasons. One, the proposed variances do not actually address. So within the bylaw, there's certain tests that have to be met for variances. And the variances requested and the reasons for them don't comply with those tests. So we're recommending refusal on that. The proposal to construct a 40-unit multi-attached dwelling on this property does not conform with the town's official plan policies, and the scale, we're not necessarily opposed to the apartment building itself. It's just at the scale and size is too large for the area. If it was reduced to being closer or within the standard developments within the R3 zone, it would most likely get a positive recommendation from planning. But as proposed, the building's too large for that site in terms of area, like minimum area required, the maximum density, maximum building height, and then there's also an access issue just in terms of where they're accessing it. So based on the variances required for this site, planning does not recommend that this proposal be approved.
It's almost double the height. That's, if you look at the variance there, 35 feet, but this is 65, so I mean, that's not even close.
Yeah, so density-wise, you're talking 40 units, where maximum's 24. Building heights, you're 65 over 35 standard, and then your minimum lot area is just shy of 3,000 square meters. So there are some drastic variances required, and unfortunately, we don't believe they meet the tests under a zoning bylaw or even the test from the Provincial Planning Act.
Even if the variances were much less, I think from a public meeting perspective, there'd still be some challenges as to whether it would conform to the area. I hate to see, given our housing challenges, such a project be rejected, but we have to give consideration, as others have mentioned, to the residents in the area as well. Wondering whether the developer, I'm sure you've met several times with the developer, whether there's an interest in development in other areas that are more suitable to the scale of project that they're proposing here, and whether there is a different scale project that they might want to propose for this particular site. Otherwise, I'm not in favor of the development as it's being proposed right now, and I'll be voting against the motion to move it to a public meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion or any other questions for Phil or comments?
No, just to reiterate what Councillor Dowling said, I think if the developer were to come back with something that is more in line with the plan for that area, we would be happy to consider. And like Councillor Chandler said, we don't want to be in a position where we're turning down, Councillor Dowling as well, turning down housing, especially for seniors, but it has to be, within reasonable standards. Unfortunately, I won't be voting in favor of this either, but I would hope that the developer will come back with a plan that will work for that space.
Thank you.
So I'll put the motion on the floor. Are we voting for a public meeting?
It might be appropriate to call all of those in favor at this
Pardon?
point. It might be appropriate to call for all in favor.
I think it's important clarification,
Yeah.
though, to vote in favor is to say we're moving to a public
That's
meeting.
correct, yeah.
Okay,
Vote against is
Okay.
to say that
That's correct.
we're not.
good.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion, all in favor? All voting against?
Nay.
Nay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate your comments on the planning side of things there. Yeah. Okay, thank you, folks, for that. Moving to resolution PH 029-2023, Community Campus Subdivision, new street name requests. This comes from Planning and Heritage, specifically the Heritage Subcommittee, moved by myself as chair of that committee, and the resolution reads as follows. Whereas at a regular council meeting held April the 12th, 2023, preliminary approval was granted to an application from the town of Stratford to subdivide parcel numbers 1137884 and 1137892, approximately 69.96 hectares, or 172.90 acres, for the purpose of creating the town's community campus and business park expansion. And whereas 2 new roads, Street A and B, will provide access to and service community campus land. Street A will extend through the community campus land and intersect with Hollis Avenue and Bunbury Road. Street B will T-intersect with Street A and extend to the southwest property line of the community campus land and stop with future connection to the Mason Road. And whereas at a Heritage Subcommittee meeting held on August 28th, 2023, and via email poll held on September the 4th, 2023, the committee passed a motion to, and later amended the motion September 4th, to suggest the following street names. 1. John Joe Sark be the name of Street A. The late Captain John Joe Sark was a Mi'kmaq leader. He was an advocate, educator, author, father, and friend to many. Remembered as a trailblazer. Given the story of dropping out of school in grade 8 due to racism, eventually graduating from PEI, and promoting the name change of the rural's mascot, there is poetic justice for the community campus to include his name, given that the street will be home to the new high school, whose catch basin will include his home in Johnson River. Farquharson, to be named Street B, to recognize the Farquharson family who lived on and farmed the property for almost 200 years over which Street B crosses. In the alternative for Street B, Russell, should Farquharson be in conflict with existing streets, i.e. Ferguson. Russell, who was a veteran of the First World War, was born on the Farquharson farm and lived there until 3 weeks prior to his 80th birthday. It was grandsons of Russell Farquharson, Robert and Paul Farquharson, who sold the property to the town for the community campus. Whereas planning staff will contact the Crossroads Rural Fire Company to verify that the name Farquharson recommended for Street B is not similar to other names listed in the Crossroads Fire District, as to not cause conflict or misinterpretation when used by any emergency service provider. Should the Crossroads Rural Fire Company determine a potential conflict or misinterpretation exists, the Heritage Committee provided an alternative name, Russell, to serve as a substitution of Farquharson. Be it resolved that approval be granted to the following street names for the community campus subdivision. John Joe Sark Drive, being Street A, Farquharson Street, Street B, Russell Drive, Street B alternative, should Farquharson be in conflict with existing streets. This resolution bears a recommendation of the Planning and Heritage Committee as discussed at a meeting held on September the 5th, 2023. And that is the motion.
Seconded by Councillor Jackson.
So,
okay, discussion.
So with respect to this, the only thing I'll say at this point in time, I mean, I think the names speak for themselves. I think they're an appropriate exercise of our discretion. There was an interesting comment from somebody at our planning meeting on September the 5th, and I apologize, it's likely captured in the minutes, but I can't attribute it to this person right now. But it was an important thing, and I'm not suggesting any changes to this motion that's before you, but something to keep in mind, I think, that I'm going to keep in mind at future planning meetings, as well as keeping in mind at future council meetings, is that Heritage does not simply look to the past. Stratford is becoming every day more and more multicultural. Just because we have groups in our community who have not been here for 200 or 300 or whatever years, does not mean that we will be excluding them from consideration in resolutions such as this going forward. And I think it's just something that's important for our council to keep in mind. Not looking for any changes to this, but it was a comment from one of our members that really struck me, and certainly something that I'm going to keep in mind.
Okay, I just have, are we open for discussion yet?
Yes.
Yeah, keep going.
Just wondering that John Joe Sark was a tremendous voice for the Indigenous community over the years, well, throughout his life, in the advancement of Indigenous rights and reconciliation. I'm just wondering whether it's been explored and it may have been discussed as to whether the others within the Indigenous community have any plans to honor John Joe Sark by way of street naming within other communities in the province. And if so, we wouldn't want to be stepping on that. I don't know if anything, I'm saying there is anything. I was wondering whether we should touch base, if it hasn't been done already, with the island chiefs to see if that is a factor that might come into play or not.
So from what I can recall, Ron, I'm just going to go through some of my emails here just to confirm it, and other people can have that discussion. I do believe that there had been some outreach already, but I just want to confirm that. Just give me one moment.
Sure.
Is there something in the minutes there, Jeff?
Yes,
Yeah.
this isn't in the minutes. This comes from an email sent from Doug Kelly, who's a member of our Heritage Committee.
Yeah.
So Julie Pellissier-Lush, who's knowledge keeper of Lanui and niece of John Joe Sark, is in full support of the name being considered for the community campus street name. So it was canvassed with Mr. Sark's family, and they're in full support of that.
I just have a question in regards to that. So the proposal for John Joe Sark, that came from within the committee? It wasn't a request?
It wasn't a request, no. It came from our committee.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we consulted with his family.
And was there any conversation with the arts and culture, or was there any, I know that aside from this, that there have been conversations in regards to the naming of streets, memorials, etc. Like that's a policy that's being currently worked on within the Arts and Culture Subcommittee.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if this is conflicting in any way as we approach or have already faced and will perhaps continue to have interactions with residents who are looking to memorialize and or honor different people in different ways. And I just wondered if there had been any conversation.
As far as I know, there hasn't been, but
So-
I mean, this isn't set in stone. If everyone here wants to do that, I mean, I think it's possible that we delay this motion, or if we can, Mr. CAO, I don't know if that's a possibility, if you want to have those discussions or not, but that's.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I am in support. I can understand and the meaningfulness, the significance. I do support it, and at the same time, I see that subcommittee is kind of working in a somewhat similar trajectory to try and have policies surrounding how we approach these requests when they're incoming in the future. So.
The difference being this wasn't a request from a particular family to have a name put in place that might conflict or might not coincide with what the Heritage Committee has developed and proposed.
Correct.
As names. This is coming from the committee, and I'm fully in support of both of those names and the alternate being put forward. I simply wanted to ensure that there wasn't something in the works within any other Native communities on the island to honor Mr. Sark in that way, and that being not the case, I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us to honor him in that manner.
Yeah.
I can't say that there's not, Councillor Dowling, but I do know that we do have the support of Mr. Sark's family members.
And I know, like John Joe Sark, I actually knew John Joe pretty well, and I taught his daughter Amy, and there's some connection there. But like to me, it would make more sense to name like the library in the new school, John Joe Sark Memorial Library, and have Indigenous paintings and have an area in that, something that could be celebrated, researched, and where John Joe grew up. He was born in Johnson's River. He lived in Johnson's River his whole life. to me, like, to name a road here, which really didn't have as much meaning. I mean, it was certainly, it would carry his name and that his meaning itself, but John Joe just wasn't about Stratford and Johnson's River, etc. I mean, you remember going back to when the Plan B highway was proposed out through, New Haven. He was one of the front people that said that this should not be built. Like, he certainly put his ideas, his mark on issues all across the island. Like, it just seems to me like there's something that would be a bigger, that would be more connected to who he is and who he was, than just a road. Like, it just seems it needs more substance to me than to just have a road, right?
Yeah.
I think to absolutely what you guys are saying, and Ron, I echo your thoughts too, that to work with the to work with our Indigenous people, communities on PEI and committees, and find out what would be their wishes, because this was not driven by them. And certainly I think to honor, it's been 8 months since you passed away. There probably is other things in the works, so we should look at that before we decide that a street is the number one way to honor this trailblazer.
I don't think that naming a street would necessarily preclude any other honors that might come about by way of naming facilities or libraries, that sort of thing. My only concern was that there wasn't in the works the naming of another street that we would then be stepping over. If that's not the case, I'm still in favor of naming the street. It is still a significant honor for somebody to have a street named after them, particularly one as well used as this one is going to be. And if the province deems it appropriate, something out of our control would be naming of libraries, that sort of thing, something within our control, and something that's required of us as a council is to name streets. And I think in cooperation with or compliance with the recommendations, I know the Heritage Committee put a lot of thought into this, and I think it's a good choice for a street name,
Yes.
regardless of what other honors might come down the pipe, so long as it's not going to step on the toes of any Native community who are currently proposing a street name change or street name identification.
Yeah, and I think the same thing. I'm not against his name being put on the street. By no means am I saying that. I'm just saying there's levels to this, and make sure that we know what is in the works for Mr. Sark, and to see that, because if there were planning to put the name of the library, and then we have the street, and also someone else, we're planning to do this here. If you were saying, okay, you have 3 different things for this, it'd be good to talk to the family and talk to the community and Indigenous community, and if they think that this is absolutely, they're honored that his name was brought forth, and to have his name on the street would be just the very, very best, then I think that's what we do. That's absolutely what I believe. I know John Joe. I knew him. He wasn't a showy person. He certainly advocated for not only for Indigenous rights, but also for all Islanders' rights. But he certainly wasn't a person that wanted to put himself forward to be in the limelight because of being in the limelight. He actually wanted to put his name forward for a cause.
Yep.
Right?
Well, I see the committee sometimes have a hard job, but I mean, these 3 names are
The committee did a wonderful job.
wonderful
by the way.
job, yeah.
Wonderful
And,
job, yes.
And with 3 names, and I go back, we have control over this, the streets, right, and would agree with Councillor Dowling there, like with the Ferguson and Russell Drive, so it's very knowledgeable for that family, and I think it's a great, it's going to be a busy area, 2 schools, campus.
All three are great suggestions. Any of the 3 names would be excellent.
Yeah, if I can, I fully support the naming as proposed. I think it is very symbolic that we would have Captain Sark's name on there, especially with the work done around changing the the name at Charlottetown Rural back in the days, and all that he's contributed to the community, and it may be the first of many things, Councillor Cox. You know, with the Knowledge Keeper giving us the go-ahead, I think that's all we need to do that, and whatever else may be planned, I think that's great. And again, he probably wasn't someone who wanted all this, but he deserves all the recognition, and I think when the kids get on the bus and see that, they're going to be reminded of
Exactly.
where we were and where we're coming to now, and
Yeah.
I think we should move ahead. I think just to the other point around the committee considering these things and requests, I think we should move forward with this, and you know, in the future, look at all those. But I think we should move on this one now, and you know, when there's a request come in, consider, because we do have a lot of different communities and a lot of different folks that are having a major impact in our community. But I think with that not in place right now, I think we should move ahead, give that due consideration going forward on the policy.
I'll just add one last thing. I was teaching at Charlottetown Rural when that whole thing happened, when they changed the name from Redmond to Raiders, and there's a large flack that came from that, because a lot of people for years knew the name Redmond, right? And but it was absolutely the right thing to do, and John Joe never wavered. He fully made sure that.
What year was that, Gord? Do you remember?
Yeah, that would be around
1992.
92.
Was it 92?
92,
Yeah.
30 years ago.
I was the
31.
first graduate of the Rural
Is
Raiders.
that right? There you go.
Yeah.
In
So, and what
1992.
year? That was,
My brother graduated in 91 and it was still Redmond because I remember going to the games.
yeah, it has to be in 91 or 92. So, but I tell you, it was absolutely ahead of its time as far as in that respect. There's still names in Major League Baseball and in Major League Football that still carry names that probably should be changed, that are still going on today. But this, you look at this, is over 30 years ago to have this changed. Was so. Like I said, I fully agree with naming the street to honor John Joe Sark. I just want to make sure that like Ron said, there's another street being named or something else that's, you know, as long as it's fully what everyone wants and supported by his family especially, I fully support that.
Okay,
Any other discussion?
all motions on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Nay.
Thank you very
Motion
much.
carried. 3 names carried.
Yes, thank you. Excellent discussion. I appreciate that, everybody. I think just not germane to the motion, but just in general, Councillor Chandler, I think that is certainly something that I'm going to recommend to the Heritage Planning Committee, is that we do keep the Recreation, Arts and Culture Committee involved in that process. I think it would certainly be helpful to have all your voices at that.
I think,
Yeah.
well, I think that Tanya has put a lot of time and effort, as has the subcommittee, into considering policies surrounding public art and the naming and
That's right.
kind
Makes
of
sense.
timelines, et cetera, like just so
Yep.
that we are never, I guess, in the position of determining,
Yep, makes sense.
you know,
I do.
so yeah, that'd
Thank
be
you.
awesome.
Mr. Deputy, that concludes my report.
Need a glass of water?
I might, yeah.
Anyways, we'll move down to infrastructure, and I chair infrastructure, so I'll just read the report. The report is from the date of September 13th, infrastructure report. As final repairs are taking place from Hurricane Fiona damage, the infrastructure department is now preparing for the upcoming storm season. Generators have been filled, chainsaws maintained, and ready for operation, gas jugs filled, and so on. A standard operating procedure for power outages is being finalized by the utility department. Work is ongoing, progressing well on the community campus site. Most pipe infrastructure has been installed on the town property. Electrical installations are now underway. The province contract on the high school project appears to be progressing well, with much excavated material being hauled off the site. Rehabilitation work is complete at Morris Pond, and the seed and the mulch have been placed to protect the soil from erosion over the fall and winter months until ground cover is established. The pond was enhanced with a deeper channel. The discharge from the irrigation pond for the golf course is moved further upstream to improve filtration time before entering Morris Pond. And the bank along Stratford Road was widened and reshaped to allow for trees and shrubs to be planted that will help filter and protect the pond. A kickoff meeting was held with WSP for the design of the Kinloch Road Force Main project. A surveying of the project limits have been completed and the drawings being prepared. The design package is planned to be completed and ready for tender by January. The tender for the waterfront gathering and event space boardwalk closed on August 8th, 2023, with only one bid submitted. A resolution come up here next. We're recommending the award of the work to be Island Coastal Service Limited to be presented this evening. The start of construction for the water reservoir has been delayed and expected to begin in the coming week or two. Completion of the project is now pushed to December. Infrastructure staff have busy ongoing maintenance in town-owned properties, building sports fields and trails, maintenance and upkeep in vehicles and equipment. Outside staff is busy with grass cutting, trimming and gardening, painting and landscaping and garbage pickup and so on. Exterior painting of Cable Heights water building, bylaw complaints and investigations are ongoing. Temporary speed hump assessments, procurement of new bus shelter for Rankin Drive, procurement of new utility truck, annual air relief chamber inspections are underway. Sewer lateral replaced on Mason Road, and water and sewer inspections and water turnarounds for new development is ongoing. During the month of August, the Fuller's Water Station was hit by lightning, affected one pump. The station has been operating on one pump only since early August, and while we wait for the replacement component to be delivered, we are expected to, in October, which are expected in October. There was a sewer backup on Kinloch Road caused by Maritime Electric pole anchor puncturing the lateral. The repair has completed, and that's my report on September. So, any discussion around the table? Nothing?
So, I just on Moore's Pond, it says rehabilitation work is complete and seed and mulch in place to protect the soil. Will it just naturally fill in now over time, I suppose, or yeah? Or sorry, Jeannie, yeah. Give you.
Yes. The water control structure, which we had removed the stop logs to drain the pond, those are being put back in place, so it'll just naturally fill, and hopefully after the storm this weekend, we'll get some good quantity of water in there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing else?
No.
I just have a couple of thank yous there. Thank you, the provincial government there for paving East River Drive. It looks from East River Drive down Ward 3. It looks good, and I was out talking to the workers, and it looks great. And also, we have a problem with a resident in Ward 3, and the government stepped up pretty with on Earl Drive, and with the problems that we have there of the water runoff, so on. With the province stepped up, it was really nice to see that, and it's great reaching out and getting a good positive response, and it was really nice. I want to thank the provincial government for that, and thank the workers. Jeremy Pierce still working on a file with me with the Earl Drive and Clearview Estates. So I want to thank you in that. So great work. We have a resolution here, so I'm going to ask my co-chair of infrastructure, Councillor Jill Channel, to read it.
Okay.
And it's great news.
The resolution is number INC 009-2023, waterfront gathering and event space. It was brought forward by the Infrastructure Committee, moved by Councillor Steve Gallant. Whereas one tender was received on August 8th, 2023 for the construction of the Stratford waterfront gathering and event space project, which consists of approximately 330 meters of timber boardwalk with 3 lookouts and a performance area, an approximate 45 meter by 30 meter timber plaza surrounding the Michael Thomas statue. This project also includes benches, seating, lighting, and electrical components. The tender results were as follows. Island Coastal Services Limited, bid of $1,728,689.20, and that bid is excluding HST. And whereas funding through ACOA's Innovative Community Fund in the amount of $500,000 and funding through the Provincial Active Transportation Fund in the amount of $500,000 has been obtained, and whereas the capital budget amount approved for the construction and site supervision of the complete waterfront gathering and event space project has been reduced from $2,200,000, is that what I'm reading there? Sorry, yes, to $1,600,000 due to a reduction in funding. And whereas the engineering, construction, management, and inspection fees for the waterfront gathering and event space project is estimated to be $50,000 excluding HST, for an estimated project total of $1,778,689.20 excluding HST, resulting in a cost overrun of $178,689.20. And whereas a supplemental capital budget is required in the amount of $178,689.20, and whereas $300,000 of new deal funding has been assigned to active transportation, path construction, and sidewalks under the town's capital budget as a placeholder. Be it resolved that the construction of the waterfront, or of the Stratford Waterfront Gathering and Event Space project be awarded to Island Coastal Services Limited in the amount of $1,728,689.20, HST excluded, and that the new deal funding be utilized for the supplemental capital budget required in the amount of $178,689.20. Please note that this resolution bears the recommendation of the Infrastructure Committee via an email poll conducted on August 22nd and 23rd, 2023.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor McDonald.
Sorry. I should have done it
Dis-
first. That's right.
discussion.
I just have one question in relation to the supplemental capital budget amount of $178,689.20. Would that amount be included in the capital financing that we have forthcoming? Yeah.
It was definitely approved in our capital budget.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a quick question. We may not have that, but do we have any concept, like, do we have any, even a rough drawing of this?
Definitely do.
Don't worry about it right
I
now.
think we can bring it up right now.
Yeah, that's
but-
okay. That's okay. It's interesting. We've been hearing about it for a long time, and I think it's going to be a great addition to the waterfront. And I guess once we can.
I can send that around,
Yeah, that'd be
absolutely.
great. Thank you. Great news.
Yeah.
Yeah, great news. So the question I have is, it's been clawed back from 2.2 million to 1.78 million, just for the project total. And that's as a result of funding reductions?
Yes, so the approved budget that we passed back in March was 2.2 million.
Yeah.
And that assumption was based on more funding coming through the active transportation fund than what we actually received.
So has, in terms of the scale of the project, will it move more in phases now, or have we just reduced the project overall, or?
For this actual tender,
Yeah.
we haven't changed the scope.
Okay.
We were happy to see the contract price come in a little lower than we had contingency in that 2.2 million that was higher than I guess we needed at this, for this one. You know, it just worked out that way.
Okay,
Mhm.
wonderful.
I think it's been the experience of other communities, and what I anticipate with this project as well is that it would be kind of a phase-by-phase project in future
Oh, yeah.
years to add to the park and increase the available venues and public space, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we definitely have a phased plan for the entire park, and so much so as an extension of the boardwalk along the frontage of the shorefront property and such, right over to Shepherd Drive. So that could feasibly be phase 2 of the park, but we'll make that decision.
And we had some support from the provincial and federal governments.
Correct, with
Right.
the funding, yes. Yeah.
Yep, that's great. But it's great moving forward with the boardwalk and lagoon filled in and you know, and that area being developed. It's nice to see it.
Planted, it's
It's
looking
very
beautiful.
exciting. So the motion's on, any other discussion? So the motion's on the floor, all in favor?
Aye.
All against? Nobody. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Chandler.
My pleasure.
So we'll move down to Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole meeting's on August 30th. They're in their package. Everybody have a chance to look at them?
Minutes?
They're small. The Committee of the Whole meeting we had
Yeah,
on August 30th, yeah.
I've looked at them.
Okay. So we need a motion to support this? This one? No.
Do you have Councillor Cox?
Okay.
Move it. I'll
But-
second it.
Okay, we'll make a motion to support these, led by Councillor Clow, second by Councillor McDonald. Sorry, Councillor Cox. Yeah, there we go.
I don't believe we need a motion on these. Are these just for our own information, right?
I don't know if you want to adopt.
This is just for information.
Okay.
The committee, the whole minutes?
I think you're right, Councillor Jackson.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it for-
Appreciate the offer, but
No, that's what I thought. I thought it was just for information, but anyways, just want to make sure we're right. Okay, and then move down, sustainability. Go ahead, Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Wendy and Maddie for putting some time in to help me with this stuff, because we haven't had a meeting for a bit now, our committee, but we are going to meet this month again, which I'm looking forward to. The town's annual business survey will be released the next week or so. We look forward to hearing from our business community where things are going well, if they're going well or not so well, and where improvements can be made. It's also an opportunity for the business community to suggest to us ideas, activities that they would find helpful to be offered. We look forward to having a significant number of our business community partners participate in the survey. Close to 100 large trees were planted this summer in 10 town parks or properties to provide shade to residents, and many were planted along walking paths to sequester carbon and to increase the urban canopy and to add aesthetic value to public spaces. The annual water school calendar was recently delivered to the schools who participated in the water school, and limited copies are available in the town hall. The calendar displays the artwork of local grade 5 students depicting messages about water conservation. Next week, September 17th to 23rd, is National Forest Week in Canada. Staff and consultants continue to work on a draft for the Forest Management Plan, which will guide management of forests owned by the town to ensure these forests are healthy, resilient, and accessible. Through the SWITCH program, though the SWITCH program is no longer financing new projects, I just want to remind residents that the home energy improvement in Stratford is continued through the program and is beginning to be wrapped up, each of which reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So the program will offer advice over the phone for residents undertaking a home energy project. Finally, the Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee are busy planning for the new resident meetup this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11:30 at the Town Hall. New residents to the community, whether from another community on PEI, elsewhere in Canada or internationally, are invited to stop by to learn a little bit more about your new home, to meet some other residents and council members, and talk with some of the community groups who will be present. I know when the councillors here went around to different houses and we dropped off Welcome to Stratford packages, chance to meet different people who are new to Stratford was really neat to hear their story and where they came from, and some are very willing to let us know about their past and now really excited about their future as they set up roots here in our community. So that was great. The Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee are also planning a human library event as part of the Fall Fest on Saturday, September 23rd. We'll have human books available for residents to borrow and have a conversation with. I think this is a great initiative. The finalized list of human books will be made available in the coming days, but look to cover a range of interesting topics. Limited spaces will be available for pre-sign up next week, with others being available for walk-ins, with all spaces being reserved for 10-minute conversation blocks. Please follow the town's social media for more information. And I guess if I can add one final note, we are having a fairly major windstorm coming next few days. It looks like it's going to stay away from being, at least right now, as significant as Fiona was. But just want to remind residents, if you have plants and pots and etc., I'd like to take those inside. Good idea. And hopefully all these new trees we planted this summer will still be standing straight and standing up. I know I have one in my yard that I received, and but for residents, be careful, and I think all of us councillors here would echo that we worry about all our residents, and even if the winds are only 85 to 100 kilometers an hour, that's fairly significant winds. And so be safe, take care of yourself, make sure you have your generator and have some gas ready for that. And you know, if you do need help, there's all kinds of websites you can go to that prepare you for weather events. And just want to hope everybody gets through this next one unscathed. So that's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Cox.
Just a question, with the wind forecast and the potential hurricane, maybe a question for Councillor Cox or for Wendy, the new resident welcome event that's planned for Saturday. Just wondering if there's any contingency plans there for weather delays or related stuff.
Yeah, we've been following the forecast pretty closely, and every day it's kind of coming down a little bit, thankfully, and it is Saturday morning, so the plan right now is to go ahead. There's a number of events and holiday dates and things like that coming up over the next few weeks, so to reschedule, we thought if we can go ahead, let's go ahead, so that's our plan right now, but we'll probably, if anything has to change tomorrow, that will kind of be our probable drop dead to change something, but.
Excellent. So yeah, just a reminder to folks that we are having that in light of your mention here, Councillor Cox, that we are having that Saturday morning. So we'll all hopefully be there and get to meet our new residents.
Exactly.
So that's great.
Yep.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Any others? No other questions there for Councillor Cox? Here we go.
I don't have a question, but I did, and I sent this out in emails, but I just want to thank Councillor Gordy Cox for appearing as an interesting Islander on Ocean 100. He did a great job representing himself in the town, I feel, always, and perhaps we will look for more interesting Islanders in the mix here.
No.
Great job, Gordy.
That was a great job. I listened to you on the radio myself. It was great having a coffee, listening to you. No, that's good. Move down to intergovernment affairs and accountability. The report Mayor Ogden's in charge of that report. I don't think we would have it. We don't have enough.
No, Your Worship. So.
Okay, sorry.
We do have a meeting planned for the 21st, so we're picking back up after kind of a summer hiatus. So we'd be happy to provide a report at the next meeting on that.
Okay.
And looking forward, I think that's the evening of the 21st.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. We move down to human resources. There's no report in that. And then move to number 18, inquiries by members of council. Any inquiries? No. I just have one inquiry, Jeremy. It's just 9 Bunbury Road, the house, the unvacant house there on the corner there. There's nobody in it at all. It's, you know, the one when you come across the bridge on the left side. Where were we at with that, with the bylaw officer or anything like that? Anything movement on that? To find out who the owner is and so on?
We haven't had contact with the owner, but we've had staff go down and check it out a few times, and there's no movement on getting it cleaned up at this point, but it's trees down mostly and such, but there's no evidence that anybody's in the house or anybody's gotten into the house, so we're still working on it, but we are keeping an eye on it.
Does it come under our bylaw unsightly?
Not exactly. It's not defined with the trees, but we are trying to get in contact with the owner, but it's been difficult.
Like there's a number of trees down and 3 or 4 on the house and the laneway, and we have a apartment behind it, and you know, I was just thinking the cold weather coming, right? People jumping in there. So what do we, just the question I have, when we contact the owner, where do we start, where does he start their cleanup?
Well, we're trying to get in contact with the owner. It's
Yeah.
not always, sometimes they're in a number of companies and
Yeah.
such, right? So it's
Oh, I
not
understand,
as
I
easy
understand,
as-
yeah.
So we're still trying to do that, but we are keeping an eye on it, and the RCMP have been down to check on the building a few times to make sure that no one's getting into it.
Yeah.
As it's been vacant.
Yeah.
So we're gonna continue to
Well,
work on it,
I
but
remember my younger days coming across the bridge, that was a beautiful house.
Yeah.
You know, it's a beautiful house. It's, you know, on the left there, it's just, anyways, okay. Thank you for that information. Just in other committees, I'm gonna, guess I'll read the seniors report. We're this report for this month, waiting for repairs on coin mechanisms on laundry machines. They're currently hard to use, I guess. Repair work was done to some Suffolk damaged during storm, Suffolk's damaged during storms and wildlife. Replaced ceiling tiles that were damaged due to water leak. Rent forms were issued to residents noting what their rent would be in 2024, and inspections forms were completed and dropped off for an annual inspection for each unit. Fire alarm testing was conducted by T&K Fire, and currently we have 23 people on our waiting list. I think everything's up to date right now, ready. We're good for the weekend, Kim, like roofs and leaks and everything's fixed. Yeah. No, Kim does a great job, and our staff, our committee is great. This is a beautiful building, and as we talked before, we're moving forward with hopefully look at something else down the road, and we have 23 people waiting on the waiting list for for a senior home, for sort of low income. So it's a great asset to the town, and it's hopefully down the road we get another one. Anyways, I'll move down to appointments to the committees. Any new appointments to CEO? Nothing. And
Don't we have,
Oh, yes.
new finance? Yeah, we do have a new member of our finance committee.
That was already approved.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
First meeting.
Just wanted to make sure he wasn't missed.
yep. So move down to proclamations. I have a proclamation here for its pulmonary fibrosis is a very serious lung disease with no cure, and the only known intervention to prolong life this time with a lung transplant. Whereas new drugs have come onto the market in the past few years to slow down progression of the disease. And whereas an estimated 30,000 Canadians suffer from pulmonary fibrosis, with about 6,000 new cases identified each year. Whereas many are not aware of symptoms of disease until diagnosed, so it's important to learn the signs and symptoms that can be misdiagnosed. That I, Steve Glant, Deputy Mayor of Stratford, do hereby proclaim Pulmonary Fibrosis Awareness Month in the town of Stratford. And I have set my hand and caused the seal of the town of Stratford to be fixed thereof. Signed, Steve Glant, this 13th day of September 2023. And move down, any other business? Make a motion for adjournment.
I'm moving for adjournment.
Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.
Thank